Obtaining 10x rewards. Reincarnated into a novel as a side character. By Winterdragon_1. Chapter 131, Elemental Chambers. Chamber of Fire. Now that you all have managed to awaken your elements, it is time to start for real. The first phase of your training will focus on your elements. This will be to improve your elemental mastery over your awakened element. Allison got up from the chair she was sitting on and said, "Follow me." The children followed her as she led them outside the huge house, heading towards a small stone platform. Oliver noticed a huge array carved on the ground with many complex runic symbols drawn on its surface. Just looking at those symbols made his mind blurred. "Get on the array, we are moving to our first location," Allison said in a plain tone as everyone gathered inside the array. Allison moved her hand in a strange gesture before a gentle light enveloped all of them. Oliver felt his head shaking and a sudden urge to vomit. Everything looked blurry, and his head felt nauseous. Ugh. He heard Daniel almost puke but in the end, controlled himself. All of them showed unpleasant expressions as they stabilized themselves by sitting down. Oops. Is this your first time using a space transportation array? It is normal to feel dizzy initially. Don't worry, it's nothing serious. You will be fine in a minute or so. She had expected them to be used to such space arrays given their clan background and lineage. Nonetheless, after they settled down, they saw they were in an entirely different place. The crisp mountain air filled their lungs, carrying a faint scent of pine and earth. In front of them were multiple cuboidal-shaped buildings, or more like chambers. Allison's voice sounded out as she explained, "These are elemental houses, and each chamber here is designed to target one particular element. For all of you with your elements, you will be training inside these." Whoa. Amber's eyes sparkled as she looked at the structure in front of her. Being someone who was raised in the presence of all sorts of tools, she was very familiar with these things. She had heard of their existence but had never seen them personally. These elemental houses were specially prepared places where a specific environment was artificially created through the use of various high-end tools, runic symbols, and complex arrays. The main purpose of these elemental houses was to gain mastery over the element associated with your aspera. And it has been evident since ancient times that the best way to quickly improve your elemental mastery and attribute was to be in a place rich in that attribute. Suppose you have the fire element and want to improve your control over it and increase the potency of the element. The best place for you would be a location rich in fire element. A place rich in fire attributed aspera. Such places could typically be found in areas near volcanoes or similar environments. However, not everyone could casually go to such harsh places as they wished. So, these elemental houses were made to imitate such places, and they were quite effective for training. However, the amount of resources consumed to keep these elemental houses running was quite exorbitant and pricey, so only a select few would ever get an opportunity to enter such a place. But here they were, the rich heirs of the 5 major clans. To them, these resources were worth nothing. I assume you all are aware of what these elemental houses are for. Briefly speaking, each one of them has a replicated environment best suited for your element, and for the next few days, you will be frequenting this place. Allison calmly said as she watched them looking at the scene in awe. The elemental houses were constructed at a place on the mountain top. There were some trees behind the elemental houses, and beyond them was endless white fog, so not much was visible to the naked eye. However, the scene was still just as enchanting. Oliver took a deep breath. The air was slightly cold and fresh. He could not wait to enter one of these chambers. "Let me give you all a small tour of the elemental houses first." She told them to follow her as she led them into the first chamber. "This here is the fire-attributed element chamber." She slowly pushed apart the heavy metal door. Instantly, a heat wave swept past the whole crowd of children standing behind her. She easily entered inside the gate, prompting the others behind her to slowly follow. The moment they stepped inside, a blazing hot air assaulted their faces instantly. Oliver could not help but close his eyes momentarily. Narrowing his eyes, his brows furrowed as he looked at the scenery in front of him. In front of him was a pond of terrifyingly hot lava, its molten surface bubbling and churning with a menacing glow. The ground beneath their feet was charred and cracked, black and coal scattered like the remnants of a forgotten inferno. The oppressive heat seemed to pulse from the very air around them, making it hard to breathe. It was as if they were standing on the surface of a volcano at the moment. He could feel the heat from the ground through his expensive shoes. He was sure that if he stepped inside barefoot, he would burn his soles immediately. Not only that, but just the normal temperature in the room was very hot, and he was already starting to feel uncomfortable just being present inside. Dash. It burns my face. Amber cried out as she ran back to the exit, leaving the room at once. TSK, she can't even handle this level of heat. Well, it should be expected given her endurance. Allison shook her head as she said this. Alfonso heaved a heavy sigh, wiping off the sweat that streamed down his face like a river. Each breath felt like inhaling fire, his lungs protesting against the scorching air. His clothes clung to his skin, drenched in sweat, as he desperately tried to find some relief from the relentless heat. It was as if he was inside a literal volcano. He was relieved that he was not the first one to escape the room. Excuse me, but I cannot stand here anymore, my skin is burning, he said after a few more seconds passed. In the end, Alfonso also spoke up. He could not tolerate it either. Chapter 132, Bella's Element. The teacher's shock. Excuse me, but I cannot stand here anymore, my skin is burning, Alfonso said after a few more seconds passed by. He couldn't shake off the burning sensation on his skin. He glanced at the others, seeking reassurance, but found only shared discomfort etched on their faces. In the end, Alfonso also spoke up. Well, we are all leaving now, Allison said as she glanced at the faces of the others. She could see Daniel and Evelyn having a tough time as well. It looks like you all are too weak to be here. Hearing her words, they couldn't help but lower their heads in embarrassment. After all, it was true that they were really having a tough time just being at the entrance of the chamber. The oppressive heat of the chamber seemed to be getting heavier with each second, beads of sweat forming on their brows and trickling down, leaving dark patches on their clothes. What if they were asked to go deeper? They really had no endurance. You all don't need to make such faces. It's natural that you would feel such difficulty being in an environment that does not align with your element. But still, I want you all to at least be able to hold your ground even if the situation is not in your favor in the future. This is just the beginning, and most people are like this initially. Allison said in a soft voice as she asked them to leave one by one. Remember, true strength isn't just about thriving in comfort, it's about enduring through the challenges, she added, her voice firm yet encouraging. She did notice one thing, however. And that was Oliver's resistance. She could see all the other children were drenched in sweat and had terrible expressions. But he remained unbothered. She could not see a drop of sweat on him amidst the furnace-like heat, his eyes steady and breaths even, contrasting starkly with the others' evident struggles. Is he more resistant to the fire element? What's his element? She wondered this as she looked at the others. Even Nadia had a frown on her face while leaving. She had awakened the ice element, so naturally, she was in a place polar opposite to her inherent attribute. She was at a natural disadvantage there. She decided to ask them their elements once they were out. If her guess was correct, then Oliver might have an element close to the fire element or aligning with the fire element family branch. How could she know that after obtaining a special physique, his body constitution had changed a lot? With the eternal winter physique, even in disadvantageous surroundings, he would still be resistant to a very high degree. His natural body temperature alone was now way lower than a normal human would have in the first place. So normal heat had little to no effect on his naturally cold body now. The eternal winter physique not only protected him but seemed to exude a faint aura of frost, subtly cooling the air around him. While an individual with an ice element might suffer, someone like him, whose entire body constitution was based on evolved ice, naturally would not be at a serious disadvantage in such a place. After exiting the fire element chamber, Allison swiftly closed the heavy metal door with a bam. She turned around and couldn't help but question, "Right, I forgot to ask, but what are your elements?" Her eyes scanned the group with keen interest, awaiting their responses. She eyed Oliver, Bella, Daniel, and Evelyn when she asked this question. "I have the thunder element," Daniel spoke up first, seemingly proud of his attribute nature. The thunder element was a branch variant of the common element and was extremely potent. "Oh, you have inherited your clan's signature element. Not bad." Allison had a hint of surprise. The thunder element was not common and was quite rare in general. Individuals with the thunder element had a lot of potential, given that it provided both speed and attack power. Not to mention, the Sacred Sword clan's main family had many thunder-attributed individuals. Many of their sword techniques and exorcism techniques were based on the thunder element as well. Each technique of their clan was quite destructive in nature, and on the battlefield they always made the demons regret being their opponents. It was an impressive element overall. "I have the light element, teacher," Evelyn spoke up next, her eyes shining with a strange glint. With her golden shiny hair and deep red eyes, she already had a holy look, but coupled with her light element, she could easily be termed a saint. Her appearance and her element really matched each other. "A light element? That's very rare," Allison commented, again surprised. The light element was one of the rarest elements, and not only that, it was the most effective element against demons. Just a small attack from the light element could easily obliterate a demon. The exorcism techniques based on the light element were the absolute weapon against any demon. It was noted in textbooks that ancient exorcists with light elements were one of the major reasons that humanity was able to stand against demons in the first place. As long as you awakened the light element, you were guaranteed a special spot in any place in human territory. Even the major clans and top organizations would pay attention to an individual with the light element and nurture them with plenty of resources. Allison was genuinely surprised that someone from the Celestial Paradox clan's main family lineage was able to awaken the light element. It could be said that with their potent bloodline and light element, Evelyn was destined to become a powerhouse in the future. She was a valuable asset to humanity. Her eyes couldn't help but shine. She was going to make sure that Evelyn would be able to utilize her element to the best of her capability. She was feeling excited after a long time seeing so much potential. Bella was next as she said in a calm voice, "Teacher, I have magnetism as my awakened element." Allison felt numb for some reason. The light element was already so rare, but magnetism. That element was very rare. She had hardly ever heard of individuals awakening magnetism as their element, even in her long life of hundreds of years. She could count people with magnetism as their primary element on one hand. But one thing that was common among them all was they were all powerhouses in their own league. She felt a little complicated inside. Both these sisters had immense potential, and she was the one to nurture them to enter the vast world out there. The thought of training someone with such a unique element sent a thrill of challenge through her seasoned veins. But the element magnetism, she did not think that there was an elemental chamber dedicated to that element in these elemental houses. The element was extremely rare, even more so than some known rare elements like light. Individuals awakening such elements were 1 in a million, so making an elemental chamber that consumed so much resources for such a small percentage was not very feasible. Plus it was not even guaranteed that if they prepared such a chamber, it will ever be used in the future. Who knows that a person with magnetism as the element would ever come under them or not? Of course, that was not the only factor. If one were to ignore this in favor of their potential and the future of such individuals for humanity, the main issue was the mystery surrounding the magnetism element. Not only was it not researched in depth, there were many complexities revolving its true nature, power, and method of training. The exorcists dedicated to such researches were still not able to comprehend the element of magnetism in as much depth as other elements so far. First of all, finding individuals with magnetism as their element was already very hard, not to mention, convincing them to agree to take part in research was another chore. Most of the people would not allow others to research on them or their body, especially when it might cost them their lives too. So Allison's worry was justified. She would need to delve deeper into this matter and prepare conditions suitable for Bella to train her magnetism element in. Of course, she could do much more before that. While finding exorcism techniques and setting up a proper environment for magnetism might be complex. However, she could still train Bella in the basic way. All elements follow the similar technique in the beginning stages. Magnetism was a hybrid element and a very mysterious and powerful one at that, control over electromagnetism, radio waves, and even light to some extent. This was just the gist of mastering magnetism. Not to mention the control over metals it provided. It was only until later that the elements start to have much higher requirements for these. Chapter 133, Elemental Chambers. Wind, Water, Earth, Ice. Chapter 133. It was only later that the elements started to have much higher requirements. The most that could affect Bella was the lack of an elemental chamber like others, but it was no matter if she could compensate for that in other areas and aspects. Now it was her duty to train this girl for the future. I should get in contact with them. A fleeting thought passed through her mind as she remembered something. She calmed down as she looked at Oliver and asked, "What about you?" She was curious about it. This was the main reason why she even asked them in the first place. It all stemmed from her curiosity about his element, and she was surprised by so many answers. "Water element," he calmly replied. Ah. She did not know why, but she felt slightly disappointed or less excited. Perhaps she was expecting something even rarer than the previous answer. So when she received the answer that it was one of the basic elements, she could not muster up that same level of excitement as before. She quickly composed herself as she looked at him. The water element was also great, but she could not understand his previous resistance to heat then. She could sense there was something unique about Oliver, something that set him apart from the others. His composure and resilience hinted at a deeper power yet to be fully realized. This group, with their diverse elements and extraordinary potential, was unlike any she had trained before. The prospect of unlocking their latent abilities excited her more than she cared to admit. The water element was inherently the polar opposite of the fire element, so speaking logically, he should have suffered the most in that environment. Shaking her head, she decided to let the matter rest for now. She had more important things to focus on. Evelyn, Bella, these two sisters needed special attention given their elements. Let's move on to other chambers. I will show you all of them. She announced and led them to the next chamber in high spirits. This here is the earth element chamber. They reached another thick metal door as she easily pushed it open. Inside, they saw a completely different scenery compared to outside. The terrain was rocky with cliffs, boulders, and caves everywhere. Uneven ground with a multitude of rocks of varying magnitudes. In the distance, there were soil and sand pits scattered around, possibly for manipulation training for the earth element. They could even see dense forests with large trees and massive roots all over the area. It was the heart of nature in a sense. Absolutely crazy. Amber could not help but exclaim in joy. She was really compatible with such terrain after awakening the earth element. Well, this is indeed a very beneficial place for you. Not to mention, these chambers allow the person to manipulate some conditions as per choice as well, but you need not bother with them as I will be adjusting those things. She clarified as she further added, now, you can stay here and start using your element while I introduce the other elemental chambers, or you could follow us. I will guide you one by one. She asked the others to follow her to get familiar with other chambers. Amber decided to follow her since she was also curious about the other element chambers. Next was the wind element chamber. It was quite simple, with open plains and tall grasses. High-altitude platforms were built all around in the distance, with strong gusts flowing past them. In one corner, they could even see floating bridges in the sky. They must have utilized space arrays and runes to build this place. Oliver thought, amazed. The space inside was really vast. One could never tell how big the chamber was just from looking at it from outside. The difference was very huge. Just from being present near the entrance of the room, they could feel the turbulent and cold winds messing up their hair. The wind was already quite fast at the entrance, much less in the deeper area of the room where it was akin to a windy tornado. Daniel could not help but look at Alfonso in pity as he went up to him and patted his shoulder. "It's hard out there, man. Don't get blown away." Alfonso's face turned ugly when he heard Daniel's remark as he casually swatted away his hand from his shoulder. "Humph," he scoffed. "This is nothing for me. Wind is my domain from now onwards, and this is just the beginning." His words, though confident, couldn't hide the slight tremor in his voice. Although he said it, looking at the sharp wind currents and the terrifying speed, he could not help but fall into doubt. What if he really gets blown away? That would be a terrible outcome. Daniel smiled slyly as he went back. He wanted to get a reaction out of Alfonso, and he did. Next, they went up to the water element chamber. The first thing that came to their mind when the door to the chamber opened was blue. The surroundings, as far as the eye could see, were filled with the color blue. There were vast lakes with varying depths, waterfalls with strong water currents and flow, and artificial rivers and streams flowing all around in the distance, each connected to the other, forming an interconnected network. The noise of water falling was quite loud in the room. It was as if they were standing near a dam. Oliver could not help but reach near a lake. It was a clear, transparent lake. The water was light blue and very clean. He was able to see inside the lake clearly. Underneath, he saw aquatic plants growing at the bottom of the lake, at the bed. The aquatic plants swayed gently with the currents, creating a serene underwater ballet. Not to mention, is that an underwater cave? His eyes narrowed when he noticed the mouth of a cave in the depths of the lake. A submerged cave? Is this also related to this chamber? He pondered before quickly going back to the group as they were already leaving. He still wanted to see other chambers. He could investigate the cave later. After the water chamber was the ice chamber. The grounds of the chamber were covered with snow, and icebergs were present all around the place. Frozen lakes and icicle formations were present in the distance, with cold mist covering the entire room. The group could not help but feel a chill. The temperature was definitely below freezing. Not to mention, the cold was directly biting on their skin even at the entrance of the chamber. Amber looked down at her fingers and frowned. They were already feeling numb and stiff. She glanced at Nadia and wondered how she was going to survive in such a place. The cold was relentlessly seeping through layers of clothing and chilling them to the bone. Bella gazed into the distance, and her eyes could not help but widen slightly. "Is that a snowstorm?" She pointed her finger in the distance, and the others followed her lead. "It is a snowstorm," Daniel exclaimed in shock. He shuddered in the cold atmosphere. The chamber was just as deadly as the fire chamber, maybe even more so since they did not see a firestorm. "Nadia, if you are going to stay here, I advise you not to enter deep until I allow you to. It is seriously dangerous in there, so refrain from having even the thought about it until you have enough control over the ice element," she warned her. She was already aware that Nadia was not interested in following the group to see other chambers, so she issued her a warning beforehand. The safety of her students was paramount, and she wouldn't allow reckless behavior. "I will come here later to issue you further instructions, so if you want to train until then, you can experiment." Allison turned her head towards Oliver, who looked quite comfortable despite the chilling temperature. "Also, Oliver, you have the water element, right? So you can also come here to train. It would be beneficial for you to focus on this as well. Same goes for you too, Nadia, you can also use the water chamber to practice control. Ice is a hybrid element from water family." "Yes, teacher." Oliver nodded. He was feeling quite comfortable in this atmosphere. He could feel his body adapting to this place as if it was his home. Just being here alone was making him feel changes. The eternal winter physique was absorbing the ice-attributed aspera from the surroundings already. He could feel the energy invigorating his body, strengthening him from within. He would visit this chamber more often in the future to train his physique here. After that, they left to move on to the next chamber. Nadia naturally stayed behind in the ice element chamber, not interested in seeing other chambers, and directly started training. Next was the thunder element chamber. This. Chapter 134, Water Chamber. Fill the cup? Snap. Bang. As soon as Allison opened the thick chamber door, a roaring sound of lightning rang in their ears. The sound was thunderous and terrifyingly loud. The group instinctively flinched at the intensity. As soon as the environment came into view of the group, they saw a dark stormy sky with black clouds covering the entirety of the sky. The air felt charged, almost as if the storm itself was alive and pulsating with energy. Constant lightning coursed through those thick clouds, occasionally raining down on the ground. Each bolt seemed to crackle with a life of its own, splitting the darkness with blinding light. In the distance, there were metal rods rooted into the ground and conductive surfaces spread like sheets in various areas. They covered the floor like patches, and electric current was constantly rampaging through those sheets. The ground itself seemed to tremble with each flash of lightning, proving to the raw power within the chamber. The wind was stormy under those dark clouds, and everything was just very destructive in the chamber in general. This is not a torture chamber, right? Oliver paused as he glanced at Daniel, who was dazedly looking at the thunder in the sky. His eyes held a hint of pity when he thought about the little boy that was going to be electrocuted very soon. Well then, let's move on to the last chamber. Allison's calm voice sounded amidst the roaring thunder as she led them out. Daniel remained back inside the chamber, too excited to care about other things anymore. Allison did issue him a strict warning as well, to not venture deep into the chamber early on or he would suffer severe consequences. It was finally the last chamber that Allison was going to show them. This here is the chamber of the light element. It was made after extensive research on the element and it consumes way more resources than any other chamber so far. She briefly introduced the chamber and its history. Her voice held a note of pride as she spoke, indicating the significance of this particular chamber. The history was simple. Humanity had always considered individuals with the light element to be divine missionaries sent from the heavens to aid them in their war against demonic beings and entities. The light was seen as a symbol of hope and purity, a beacon in the darkness. Exorcists did not believe in such superstitious rumors, but there were many organizations and clans dedicated to worshipping light element users as their holy beings or messengers of heaven. These groups would go to great lengths to protect and venerate those with the light element, often forming entire communities around their presence. These were so-called fanatics, all controlled by a single big organization in the novel, which was revealed much later. This organization operated from the shadows, pulling strings and manipulating events to maintain their power and influence over the centuries. Even he as the reader did not have much information about that part. He was not able to read the novel to that extent, so he was just as clueless as others. But he knew that the organization behind it was just as powerful as the Black Codex Federation or even more so. These elemental chambers were specially requested to be added by such people, donating their research and resources to nurture individuals with the light element. Swish! Allison opened the metallic door to the chamber and instantly a bright light enveloped the field of vision of the group. Swish! Narrowing his eyes, Oliver observed the interior of the chamber of light. It was a bright, open space with varying light intensities. The room was filled with bright light of varying intensities, illuminating every corner of the room. There was not an inch of darkness anywhere. There were multiple reflective surfaces like mirrors and crystals etched all around the room. The group was able to see their reflections at almost all the places instantly. In the distance, there were pillars emitting beams of light and rainbows. There was an unmistakable warmth in the room, and the group was able to relax under such warmth. It was a calm place with a bright atmosphere. If he was not mistaken, those lights emerging from the pillars were not ordinary by any means. He could sense a huge amount of aspera concentrated over those tip points. He dared not use cosmic void gaze, or he was sure he would be flashed right in the eyes. It would be akin to seeing the sun directly with the naked eye on a bright sunny day. He refrained from doing something that reckless. This place looks amazingly mystical. The group was in awe of the chamber of light, it was really beautiful after all. Evelyn could not help but feel a little special inside to have awakened the light element, and how all the others in the group were amazed by this. Well then, that's that for you lot. Now get to the chambers of your respective elements. I will visit you one by one and impart techniques and manipulation of your element. Yes, teacher. Slowly, they started to leave for their respective chambers one after the other. Bella suddenly interrupted Allison as she said, "What about me, teacher?" She sounded hesitant as all her friends were assigned to chambers of their elements, but she was not. She had some inkling as to why that was. Her family had constantly emphasized and praised how rare magnetism as an awakened element was. Nonetheless, she still felt a little uncomfortable inside being isolated like this while others had something to do and train. Don't worry, girl. We are going to train in a different way. Allison patted her head and asked her to wait outside for a while. Now then, I should get moving too. Underscore. Oliver approached the entrance of the water chamber, a shiver of anticipation running down his spine. The metallic-looking door, made of smooth, translucent blue crystal, shimmered with a soft light, refracting into a spectrum of colors. Taking a deep breath, Oliver pressed his hand against the door, which swung open with a gentle whispering sound. The moment he stepped inside, he felt a sense of tranquility wash over him. The chamber was illuminated by a bright light from the bioluminescent plants and algae lining the walls and the lake. The soft glow created an ethereal atmosphere, making the chamber feel like a hidden oasis. He heard the gentle splashing of waterfalls, the soft patter of droplets, and the distant echo of the strong water current. To him, this was not bothersome at all, more so, it sounded like a peaceful melody. It was as if the water was singing a calming lullaby, inviting him to connect with it. The air was filled with the fresh scent of rain, mixed with the earthy aroma of moss and wet stone. There was also a faint, pleasant smell of aquatic plants and flowers blooming along the water's edge. The combination of scents was refreshing and invigorating. He did not wait long before the door behind him opened once more as Allison entered the chamber too. She handed him a small, florid cup made of polished stone and pointed to a distant pedestal in the center of the lake, where a single water lily floated. "Your first task is to fill this cup with water from the lake without touching the water physically," she said, her voice as soothing as the chamber itself. "You must connect with the element and draw the water to you if you want to fill this, literally." Oliver paused as he looked towards the area where she had pointed. The distance was quite large. The water lily was directly in the middle of the lake, and he had to draw water from that distance to fill his cup. He could control water nearby with some ease, but he had never tried to move water over larger distances than his arm's length ever. This was going to be his first time. Holding the cup in front of him, he closed his eyes and tried to feel the water's presence. He visualized the water rising and filling the cup, but when he opened his eyes, the water remained still. Not surprising, considering he was about 10 meters, around as much as the size of a city bus, away from the lake. He attempted again, this time using more aspera to control the water to obey him and fall into the cup. He focused on the sensation of the water, trying to pull it towards him like a string. It did not work again. He tried again, this time, just trying to effectively push the water at the lake's edge and create some disturbances towards him and then draw out water. He envisioned small ripples forming and moving towards him. But again, this method also did not work. He kept attempting and trying different methods that came to his mind, trying to create all sorts of disturbances in the water, waves, or anything to pull out the water from the lake. He only got more determined to succeed with each try. He did not lack aspera and used all the aspera without constraint. He experimented as much as he wanted without getting tired. He was non-stop and kept trying, but the end output was not satisfactory and lacking. Despite his efforts, the water remained stubbornly out of reach. "It's really testing my patience," he thought with a forced smile as he pointed his hand towards the water lily once more. Chapter 135, Training Elements. Chapter 135. It's really testing my patience, he thought with a forced smile as he pointed his hand toward the water lily once more. The water in the lake remained stubbornly still, defying his attempts to draw it toward him. Frustration simmered within him. How could he have so much aspera and still fail to control the water? He tightened his focus, trying to force the water to obey, but it only seemed to resist more. Was his technique the problem then? He could not feel that it was the case. He had been doing as per the instructions and his instincts. If the technique was really the problem, then he would not have been able to even cause the slightest changes or fluctuations in the water in the first place, much less move anything. But since that was not the case, then he was sure it was not that the technique he was using to be changed. He'd been at this task for what felt like hours, with no success. The more he focused on trying to force the water to move, the less responsive it seemed. He pondered. Was the approach correct? Should he try something different? A devious idea came to his mind at the moment. Should I just go and fill the cup with water from the lake? But in the next moment, he laughed it off. This was foolish. Allison would definitely not believe till he showed her a practical demonstration in front of her own eyes. Not to mention, it was also his loss if tried to fool her. In the future, he would have to rely on himself only after all. It had been some time since he was busy with this task without any outcome. He heard the sound of doors moving and Allison entering. His concentration wavered, and he felt the cool dampness of the chamber starting to seep into his bones. Creak. The creak of the door broke his concentration, and he glanced up to see Allison entering. Her calm presence reminded him to take a breath. Allison approached him, her eyes looking in the still empty cup with a hint of curiosity. "Show me what you've been doing," she asked gently. Oliver nodded, demonstrating his methods with a practiced but weary hand. Allison watched, her brow furrowing slightly, and then she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder to stop him. She was quite surprised internally, given how many methods he had already shown her and used before her coming back. He must have consumed a lot of aspera and was still able to keep going without a break. Did he drink a potion, she wondered, as this was the only reasonable explanation for his stamina so far. "You're trying to control the water too forcefully," she observed. "Water is fluid and adaptable. It responds best to harmony and flow. Feel its rhythm, become one with its movement. Let it come to you naturally. Give your mind some rest and think about what I said." Oliver sighed. Was he really forceful? She might have seen something that he had missed. He closed his eyes and focused on the cool, tranquil aura around him. While Oliver was alone in the water chamber, his friends in the nearby chambers were undergoing their own training. In the high plateau wind chamber, Alfonso struggled to control the powerful gusts of wind. His task was to create a gentle breeze to move a feather from one side of the chamber to a specific point located far away amidst the raging winds. However, each attempt resulted in either too much force, sending the feather flying uncontrollably, or too little, leaving it motionless. Allison's advice echoed in his mind: become one with the wind's natural flow. Don't resist it. Allison had given him the advice to become one with the wind's natural flow and not resist it, which he seemed to be doing. Sweat trickled down Alfonso's temple as he tried again, inhaling deeply and exhaling with a soft, controlled breath. The feather fluttered, then slowly drifted toward its target, carried by a breeze as gentle as a sigh. Meanwhile, Amber was deep in the rocky formations and underground tunnels, struggling to shape a small boulder into a smooth sphere. Her initial efforts resulted in jagged, uneven shapes, her annoyance growing with each failure. Her efforts seemed to crumble literally. She was also prohibited from using any tools to aid herself, which made her quite annoyed. To her, tools were something akin to a body part of hers. Allison had told her to connect with the earth's patience and persistence, to mold it with steady hands and a calm mind. She sat down, closing her eyes and placing her hands on the boulder. Slowly, she let the earth's steady energy flow through her, her movements becoming more deliberate and patient. Gradually, the boulder began to take a smoother shape. In the stormy thunder chamber, Daniel's task was to summon a controlled bolt of lightning to strike a designated target. His struggles were intense, the lightning often veered off course or dissipated too quickly. Sometimes, he would even almost bolt himself. He was overexcited to control lightning, after all. His excitement often resulted in wild, uncontrolled bursts of energy, which resulted in the above outcomes. Allison had to remind him to harness his emotions, to channel his intense energy into focused power rather than letting it scatter. According to her, it was not good to go against their inherent personality. Daniel was an aggressive and hot-headed boy, his nature was like that. So doing something that went against that nature of his was a waste of power, according to her. She believed that it was instead better to use those intense emotions and energy for something more productive. That was to convert the intensity into power. Given that his awakened element was thunder, an already raging and turbulent attribute, she felt it was better that he use his over-the-top energy and transfer that to his manipulation of his element. Allison had told him to harness his emotions, to channel his intense energy into focused power rather than letting it scatter. And this was the most difficult thing for Daniel. While it might sound advantageous that he could use his intense energy and emotions without restraining himself, to do that, he needed just as much focus and concentration. He was required to have a calm mind to be able to achieve that. He had to achieve this through concentration, which was contrary to his hot-blooded nature. He clenched his fists, feeling the crackling energy within him. With a deep breath, he focused, letting his emotions fuel the lightning. A bolt shot forth, striking the target dead center, and Daniel grinned, his eyes alight with triumph. Easy peasy. Underscore 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 underscore. In the glacial cavern in the ice chamber, Nadia had to create in detailed ice sculpture using her abilities. Her initial attempts were crude, with the ice either shattering or forming into unrecognizable shapes. Allison's advice was clear: shape the ice with delicate finesse, not brute force. Allison had taught her the importance of precision and control, to shape the ice with delicate finesse rather than brute force, which she seemed to be doing. However, something that separated Nadia from others was her persistence and lack of interest in anything other than power and strength. She was relentless, like an emotionless doll set to work tirelessly and infinitely. She would take feedback from her mentor and incorporate the teachings into her technique seamlessly. She would fail, take input, repeat, and keep training, using ice to form a finely sculpted structure. It was as if someone did not tell her to stop. She would keep on going until she fainted, so Allison had to ask her to pause in between. Allison was particularly impressed with Nadia's tenacity and aspera. So far, only Oliver and the two sisters had proven to be capable of having as much aspera as her. As for the sisters, in the sunlit light chamber, Evelyn's task was to manipulate light beams to create a specific pattern on a wall. Her initial attempts resulted in scattered, unfocused light that failed to form the desired shapes. Allison guided her to focus her inner light, to control its intensity and direction with clarity and intent. Evelyn closed her eyes, centering herself. She imagined the pattern clearly, feeling the light within her pulse in response. Opening her eyes, she directed the beams with absolute control, and the desired shape gradually took form on the wall. Underscore 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 underscore. Allison transported them all back to the dormitory using the array. As the day drew to a close, the group reconvened in the dormitory, exhaustion etched on their faces. Back in the cozy dormitory, Oliver joined his friends as they unwound from the day's events. All of them had exhaustion written on their faces at the moment. Allison had promised them a meal, and they gathered around the large wooden dining table, anticipation mingling with their fatigue as they waited for her. Chapter 136, A Special Dinner? Haha, then did you know, I used too much force and almost burnt my whole arm. The thunderbolts are no joke, very sharp and precise. Daniel exclaimed, his eyes wide with the memory. Dash. That's it? I was almost about to fall off a steep cliff due to the strong wind. Teacher came in the nick of the moment and saved me. I was almost dead otherwise. Alfonso recounted, a shiver running through him. They shared stories, laughed about their mishaps, and made fun of others. The sense of community and support filled Oliver with some warmth. He liked this sort of atmosphere. All right. The food is ready, you lot. Let's have a blast. A cheerful voice belonging to Allison sounded as she entered the dining area with a steel pot in her hands. Suddenly, Oliver had an ominous feeling when he observed the brownish fumes wafting from the steel container. Don't tell me this is one of those scenarios where the teacher would force us to eat her trash cooking? His stomach churned at the sight, and he instinctively took a step back, eyes widening in disbelief. A look of horror flashed past his eyes when Allison put down the container on the table for them to see. And he was right. The pot was nothing but a brown mess of something between liquid and solid, something unidentifiable entirely. Huh? What's this? Daniel, who was sitting a bit far, came over curiously. The pungent smell hit him, and he recoiled, pinching his nose as nausea overtook him. What the fuck is this? He instantly pinched his nose with his fingers, closing the entrance before he inhaled any more of the smell and puked on the table. His face turned green, and he staggered back, desperately trying to hold his breath. The stench was overwhelming, invading his senses with an intensity that left him dizzy. He looked at the brown content with a disgusted gaze, before his eyes wandered to the others sitting on the table and he could see they all mirrored a similar expression to his. Fuck. Daniel cursed internally. He didn't want to think that way, but looking at the contents, his mind could not help but wander to that direction, as it wandered to the worst possible thought. Isn't this basically someone's sh*t? His eyes turned into saucers as his brain no longer restrained and thought all the worst things imaginable. Yuck. Unable to hold it in, Daniel fell to his knees and puked. The sight of Daniel vomiting on the ground, coupled with the smelly brown food and foul smell, all those present felt their hunger disappear automatically. The scene made their hunger vanish. What happened to you? Already breaking out on the first day of training? Allison looked at him confused. She seemed to be genuinely clueless why he was behaving in such a way. Whoa. Teacher, it seems he is having a tough time enduring the stress. Allow me to take him back to his room. He needs immediate attention and medical care. Oliver rushed over, hoping to escape the impending meal. Oliver walked over hurriedly, ready to take Daniel to his room and never return. However, his scheme was cut short when another voice sounded out. Wait, let me do it. My room is just next to Daniel. It would be more efficient for me to take him back. Alfonso said in a panicked tone. What are you saying? How is this related to rooms being next to each other? I will do it, this way I can make up to him for my mistake last time. Amber interjected, also desperate to avoid the meal. Amber jumped in too, ready to drag Daniel back with her. Nadia, Evelyn just watched the drama from sidelines, watching them fight among themselves on who would take him to his room. They both also did not want to eat this abomination of a dinner either, but they could not act like them. Stop. Allison said in a loud voice, making the trio who were bickering among themselves on who would take Daniel back to his room. I will do it. You guys in the meantime eat the food. Allison stated as she picked up the kneeling Daniel with one hand. This isn't too severe, he just needs rest, she muttered to herself. She was thinking if it would be better to directly feed him a health potion or not, but looking at it, it did not seem to be something too severe, so she decided to let him rest. This? Looking at Allison's back, they did not know what to say. They planned to take him and then not return back to eat this food, but now the plan would not work. Glancing at the boiling brown food, they all felt a wave of disgust. No human should have to eat this. Amber whispered, worried. What do we do? Amber asked in a worried tone as she looked towards the other two. I really don't want to eat this, Alfonso said, on the verge of tears. I've never eaten anything less than a full-course meal, and now this. Alfonso looked like he was about to cry. If it was his clan, then he would have simply ordered the cooks to make something else for him. He was a picky eater and never ate anything less than a full-course fancy meal in his lifetime, and now suddenly being asked to try this alchemical creation of their teacher. He was 100% sure that he would never be able to eat this thing. He turned his head over to Oliver, who was now his only hope out of this situation. Being stared by two pairs of expectant eyes, he felt a little helpless. Nonetheless, he had to do something, or he was sure that he might not ever see the sun again. Teacher has gone up to put Daniel back to his room. It should take her a minute or two to diagnose him and then return. In the meantime, the best I could think of is to destroy this thing. He gazed at the bubbling hot brownish food. We need to get it done before she comes back. Dispose of this food. They exchanged hurried glances, a silent agreement forming. The clock was ticking, and Allison could return any moment. Alfonso and Amber looked at him and were ready to follow what he spoke. Should we throw it outside? Alfonso suggested with a frown. No, are you stupid? Teacher would definitely know if we do that. Amber immediately retorted. Then what? Alfonso asked. Oliver sighed. You all have storage artifacts, right? Someone just store it inside. Oh. Their eyes lit up. Indeed, that's the best way. Amber said excitedly. Amber excitedly said, if they stowed away this in their storage artifacts, then there was no way their teacher was ever going to find it unless they showed it to her themselves. Great, absolutely genius. Hurry up, we should do it right now. Alfonso excitedly said to them. I am not storing that stuff in my artifact, Oliver stated firmly. There was no way he was putting that abomination in his space. Either Alfonso or Amber had to do it. I don't want to stain my storage space either. Amber said and pouted at him and then looked at Alfonso. Oliver also looked at him. Ugh. Seeing the two of them corner him so quickly, he didn't have any way out. He glanced around desperately, searching for any possible excuse to avoid the task, but found none. Resigned, he let out a heavy sigh. He groaned, realizing he had no escape. He glanced at the two silent girls at the table, still observing the scene. No. He could not ask two ladies to do it for him. How ungentlemanly would that be? In the end, he had no choice but to put the food in his storage space. It's going to be a mess inside, how would I clean it? He sighed again, contemplating how to store the contents without contaminating his entire storage space. Hey, you guys, please help me out. I don't want to make a mess inside my storage space. You should know that there are potions and pills inside. If this toxic liquid touched those things, I would never be able to consume them. He asked in a bit tone to the two in front of him. Well. Oliver and Amber exchanged glances, realizing Alfonso had a point. Sacrificing his valuable items just to avoid eating the food wasn't fair. They could not sacrifice his stuff just for this. Not only would it be too selfish on their behalf, but also a huge waste of such precious resources. I have an idea. Suddenly a voice sounded out, making both Alfonso and Amber startle from their deep thoughts as they pondered about what should be done. They turned their heads towards the source of the voice and looked with wide eyes. Chapter 137. Let him cook? Chapter 137. They looked with widened eyes towards the person who said it out, unable to help but feel a little emotional when they saw him speak again. It was Oliver, who once again had an idea about the situation. He was really their go-to problem solver, who once again had an idea. Both of them felt a surge of gratitude that he was present today with them, or else they might have seriously offended Allison already. Oliver was the linchpin in their plan to avoid eating the alchemical disaster masquerading as dinner. No one wanted to risk their lives with that concoction. They needed to dispose of it discreetly, without arousing Allison's suspicion or causing a mess in their storage artifacts. So getting rid of this thing was important for them, and they had to do it cleanly so they don't make Allison suspicious of them and their activities, but also not start a mess in their storage artifacts either. Time was of the essence. They had to act before their mentor returned from settling Daniel upstairs. The two couldn't help but silently curse Daniel's luck in avoiding this mess due to his condition. The two could not help but silently curse Daniel about how lucky he was to escape this whole situation just because of his condition. "I have an idea," Oliver said as he glanced towards Nadia, who met his gaze. "However, I would need some help." Nadia met his gaze, a flicker of confusion crossing her otherwise emotionless stare. "Just hurry up. The teacher would be down any moment now," Amber urged. "Alright, I will use my element and concentrate this food in a cluster, and then Nadia, could you freeze it for me? This way, Alfonso should be able to store it successfully in his storage artifact without messing around." When they heard this, all of them had a hint of realization. Indeed, that was definitely possible. All three of them turned their heads to the only girl with the ice element. Nadia frowned, but on second thought, if she did not help then. She glanced at the food and decided to just aid them for the time being. Deciding it was better to help than to face the consequences, she nodded. Oliver quickly got to work. In fact, he could do both these things himself quickly, considering he had the control over both water element and ice element. Even though he had not trained the ice element much, he was confident in freezing some liquid on his own without any external help. But they did not need to know about this, at least not right now. He had just awakened his ice element and had not trained at all in that element either. Plus, awakening two elements despite being under 10 years of age was an inhumane achievement in this world. According to the laws and principles of the world, a human would not be able to awaken more than a one element after drinking Honorable Star's essence, not until their bodies fully assimilated the awakened element they primarily had awakened. If there were no such restrictions around, what was stopping the major clans to drown their heirs in Honorable Star's essence since birth and let them awaken all elements in the world? Not only the humans' affinity to a particular element mattered, but also the how well they would be able to manage the power of more than one element inside their bodies. A child's body was considered not strong enough to coordinate two elements internally, so no matter what, no exorcist was stupid enough to do this stunt, especially when the child could just die due to imbalance of elements in the body. If someone did not have the affinity with a particular element, then no matter how many vials of essence they devoured, they would not be able to awaken that element. Similarly, the stronger the element someone primarily awakens, the lesser their chances get to awaken more potent elements in the future. It was believed by the expert exorcists specialized in this field that a stronger primary element establishes a hardcore dominance inside the body of the individual, and further does not allow other weaker elements to exist. Suppose someone managed to awaken a powerful hybrid element like the thunder element that Daniel had awakened, then their chances would be lesser as compared to Alfonso, someone who had awakened wind element to hope to awaken a second element. This was why that individuals with multiple elements were not common. He felt it was better to have some secret cards exclusive to his knowledge only. Join for free at /winterdragon573. _______________________ Oliver got to work, stretching out his hand towards the food. He closed his eyes and focused. The rhythm of the water resonated within him as the liquid inside the steel contained stirred, slowly moving into circles as a small vortex formed at the center and in front of everyone's eyes. The liquid gathered and concentrated into a liquid ball. It was a brown-colored ball of floating liquid. "Nadia!" he called out to her. Nadia looked at the spherical ball and her eyes narrowed. His control over water element was surprisingly good. She could tell this, she would require a lot of concentration to be able to maintain this shape for a long time using liquid ice. Nonetheless, she pointed her finger towards the floating liquid ball as frost started covering the liquid, slowly freezing the entire ball until it turned into a crystalline ball of brown ice. "It's done." Oliver caught the ball in his hand midair before it crashed into the ground and threw it towards Alfonso, who caught it in the end moment with some fumbling. "So cold." Alfonso winced, quickly storing the ball in his ring. He looked at Oliver in surprise. The ice was unnaturally cold. It was weird, the ice was chilling cold, way colder than some normal ice, yet he was fine and he had such a reaction. Was he that weak compared to Oliver? He almost believed that he might have gotten a frostbite had he held the ball longer. "Finally, it's disposed of." Amber chuckled as she slumped down at her chair. She was already very tired, and now after this stunt, she did not even have the energy to bother around anymore. Simply too exhausted. It looked like she would be sleeping empty stomach. She regretted not storing some food supplies before leaving the clan. Her eyes trailed to Oliver, who was wiping his hands with a towel. She wondered if he had any arrangements or if he would be sleeping hungry too. Before she could ask if he had any food, footsteps echoed from the staircase. Allison was coming down. They quickly settled back into their seats as Allison entered shortly. She noticed the empty steel container and raised a brow as she looked at the group. "You guys already finished it?" she questioned. "Ah. Teacher, it was a decent meal. We were so hungry that we ate it all." "Ha ha ha." Amber said politely, laughing. "Why yes ma'am, sorry for the lack of decorum," Alfonso added in support. Allison hummed and looked at the other three, who just remained silent. "Well, it's good that you liked the food," she smiled and said. "Now get back to your room and prepare for tomorrow's training." With that, she left the room, leaving the group in silence. Growl. Rumble. A rumbling noise of stomach sounded in the silence. It was true that all of them were hungry. But now what? Ahem, does anyone know how to cook? Alfonso questioned. "My sister does." Evelyn spoke, but Bella was not there at the moment, so it was not helpful. "Are you kidding me? How do you expect literal kids like us to know how to cook?" Amber frowned, crossing her arms against her chest. "Well, Bella does, but she is not here, haha." Alfonso laughed lightly, but he was really hungry. Oliver sighed as he looked at them. "I can cook." "Really?" Alfonso's expression changed as his face lit up in delight. He stared at Oliver with anticipation. Amber also stared at him with surprise. She did not expect him of all people to be familiar with such a skill. "Can you please make us something?" Alfonso blushed a little. "Sorry, if I sound weird." He knew that Oliver was equally tired as them, but he could not help but ask in hope. He did not want to sleep hungry. He was exceptionally courteous when he asked. "Cook with what? Do you have the ingredients?" Oliver questioned, looking at Alfonso as if he were a clown. How did he expect to make food without ingredients? Ah. This realization instantly hit them hard, washing their dreams with a bucket of cold water. However, Oliver let out a smile as he looked at the disappointed group of people. "I do remember storing some food before leaving my clan." Chapter 138, Getting Skilled in Using Element. Practical training begins. "I do remember storing some food before leaving my clan." It took a moment for the group to let his words sink in. When they finally registered what Oliver said, their expressions lit up. Alfonso sprang from his chair, excitement written all over his face. "You have food with you. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Amber's composure shattered. "Right. Oliver, we've been starving here." "Hey Oliver, man, we." Alfonso looked at him expectant. "Of course, I can share some with all of you, but..." Oliver paused, glancing at the pack of hungry wolves before him. He continued, "You need to pay." He rubbed his hands while eyeing them as potential customers. "Pay? Pay what?" Evelyn could not help but ask. "Well, it could be anything. You all must have brought some treasures and resources, right? How about sharing some of it?" "What?" Amber's mouth dropped open. She looked at him in shock. Trading simple food for treasures? It was outrageous. This was daylight robbery. He wanted to trade simple food with treasures. How ridiculous was that? This was literal robbery. She didn't think anyone would agree to this idea at all. She expected everyone to balk at the idea, but reality surprised her. Alfonso was the first to speak. His eyes carried a determined expression as he said, "Indeed, you are right. I, the heir of Fallen Heart clan, am not shameless enough to just take your supplies without any payment." He looked at Oliver and added, "How about one vitality-strengthening potion? Is that enough for one day's worth of food?" Oliver hadn't expected him to agree so quickly. He was ready for resistance and would have given them the food anyway, but their willingness to trade stunned him. As expected of rich clan heirs, he thought, eyes shining with newfound insight. Indeed, these people were the children of richest exorcists. They did not lack resources. They were great customers. Of course. Then, here you go. Alfonso produced a glass bottle containing a blue liquid and handed it over to Oliver. Pleasure doing business, Oliver said, passing some food in return. The pleasure is all mine. Then pardon me. Alfonso went back to his chair and started eating the food elegantly. Looking at him eating and hearing the sounds of eating, the sound of him chewing the food made them gulp subconsciously. I will give you one vitality-strengthening pill. Evelyn approached him and gave him a shiny crystal green pill. Oliver exchanged the supplies, and she joined Alfonso at the table, eating quietly. Nadia came up to him and stared into his eyes. He looked back, her eyes were serious. You can have it for free, he started, but she cut him off, producing a scroll. She gave it to him and looked at him with a sharp look. Here, he did not open the scroll but first gave her food. He was intending to give it to her for free anyway, so it did not matter what she wanted to trade it with. He stored the scroll away for later inspection. Only Amber was left, her expression a mix of difficulty and unwillingness. Oliver shrugged. He wasn't going to give her special privileges. If everyone else paid, she must too. Anyway, his supplies were limited, and it was better for him if she didn't take any. Well, the food supplies will run out eventually. I should start arranging ingredients to cook in the future. He took out something to eat for himself too. It was a simple plain sandwich. Crunch. Hearing the crispiness of the sandwich Oliver was eating, Amber's mouth watered despite her efforts to control herself. Gritting her teeth, in the end, she also offered him a potion and filled her stomach with his food supplies. Join for free at /WinterDragon573. _________________________________________________________________________________________________________________ Days flowed by in a steady rhythm. Oliver stood by the lake, his brow furrowed in concentration. He extended his hand over the water, feeling the cool, fluid energy beneath his fingers. Gradually, a thin stream of water rose, shimmering in the sunlight as it obeyed his will, twisting and turning in the air. With a determined expression, he focused, his movements becoming more fluid as he manipulated the water to fill a nearby cup. The liquid obeyed, splashing gently into the vessel until it was brimming. A small smile tugged at Oliver's lips. He was getting the hang of it. He was becoming adept at using the water element, controlling it with increasing ease. He was able to successfully fill the cup by manipulating the water from the lake as well. Occasionally, the solitude of the water chamber was broken by the arrival of his friends. Daniel would burst in, his eyes sparking with energy, eager to share his latest triumph with Thunder. Check this out, Oliver. I can summon lightning with just a snap now, he'd exclaim, demonstrating with a crackling burst of electricity. Alfonso, ever composed, would stroll in, exchanging quiet advice and solutions. Try visualizing the water as an extension of yourself, he suggested one afternoon, watching as Oliver practiced. It's all about the connection. I am starting to realize it with my wind element too slowly. It's a wonderful feeling. Over the days, their bonds also strengthened. The group was slowly knitting together one way or other, either by sharing their experience or thinking ways to avoid Allison's cooking. In the evenings, they would gather in the dormitory after a long day of training. Their laughter echoing through the halls had become a common occurrence. Time flew by. He was tasked with various things day after day. One day, he was tasked with forming a straight water blade, given that its edge should be sharp. He stood by the lake, his hand outstretched, eyes narrowed in concentration. The blade wavered at first, but then it solidified, glistening with a faint blue glow. Another day, he plunged into the depths of the lake, staying submerged for as long as possible, the water enveloping him in a serene, silent embrace. He focused on his breathing, feeling the water flow through his lungs naturally, as if he belonged there. Having water element, breathing underwater was quite simple and natural to him. He was shocked the first time he tried it. One of the toughest challenges came when Allison tasked him to meditate beneath a roaring waterfall. The force constantly pounded against his shoulders, but he sat with eyes closed, legs crossed, balancing his mind amid the chaos. She had told him that it was necessary to nurture a calm mind and develop an extraordinary temperament as one should expect from an heir of a major clan. Water was often related to calm, so an individual with water attributed aspera must be calm when using it. At least that was what she believed and taught. At first, his muscles screamed in protest, but gradually, he grew accustomed to the pressure, his body and mind becoming one with the torrent. He found a certain peace in the water, a sense of belonging that grew stronger with each passing day. The water chamber slowly turned into his sanctuary where he would push himself to limits every day and discover the true depth of his abilities. Underscore 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 underscore. It's been 2 months now. You kids have made significant progress in this time span. I am impressed by you and your potential. Allison was standing before the group of children seated in front of her. Except for Bella. When they questioned where she was, all they got as a reply was that she was training somewhere else due to her element's uniqueness and situation. Now then, it's been a long while since you lot have been training your elements continuously, so from now on, we will be moving on to a practical course of training, she stated. Practical course? That's correct, it's time you put your elements to use and not just keep on training. It's better for you kids to start gaining experience and learn about real combat. The earlier it is, the better, Allison said. The group listened to her intently. Teacher, how are we going to do that? Allison looked at Amber who had asked and said in a light tone, for this, Elder Sigfur will be going to help you all. That geezer? Daniel frowned. He had unpleasant memories with that old man. Macham Elder Sigfur, you see, has a special element. It's called illusion, the element of illusion. And he is the one who will be helping you with it. Well then, he will fetch you guys soon. I have something to do, so I will probably see you all later. Ah, right, Bella will be joining your practical training soon, she said while leaving the bewildered group of children. I don't want that old bastard to be the one teaching us. I fucking hate that two-faced snake. Daniel groaned. He's very crude and ill-mannered. Alfonso also commented lightly. Whatever, it's not like you guys can do anything about it. Amber scoffed. Do what? Suddenly, an old and hoarse voice sounded behind them, making everyone flinch in shock. Chapter 139 The Unsettling Grip in the Elder's Heart. Do what? Suddenly, an old and rasping voice sounded behind them, making all of them flinch in shock. What? Amber spun around, eyes wide, and there stood Sigfur, hands clasped behind his back, wearing a simple red robe. Sir Sigfur. When did you get behind us? All of them looked at him in shock, they did not sense him approaching at all. I just arrived, he said, his tone flat. Oh. Hearing this, all of them heaved a sigh of relief. If Sigfur had overheard Daniel, they all knew there would be consequences. Anyways, follow me, I will take you to your new training area. Sigfur said as he clicked his tongue and left, with the group following behind him. They followed him to an array formation. Sigfur activated it, and they were transported to a new location. By now, they were accustomed to the teleportation arrays and the odd sensations they induced. The initial nausea and disorientation had become minor inconveniences, easily brushed off. Be it nausea or something else, they eventually got used to that feeling in the end, so it did not bother them as much as it used to in the past. They were once again back to the familiar hall they were in at the beginning, meaning they were at the base of the mountain, the very bottom where they all started. Alright, let's not waste time. We begin now, Sigfur announced. Sir Sigfur, what are we be doing first? Evelyn asked. The first thing I want you to focus on is improving your teamwork. By now, you all must be aware that you will be entering the perpetual plane from your clans. While that place is a land of opportunities, it is anything but simple. The dangers there are just as terrifying for your level. He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in. Nothing is free, especially treasures and resources. To gain power, you must face trials. A silence enveloped the group as they listened. So the most appropriate approach for you lot is to travel in a group or team when you enter that place. Not only will it increase your chances of survival out there, but you will also have more probability of chancing upon great treasures. Which is why I will help you coordinate with each other and improve your teamwork as well. With varying elements, it is going to be difficult initially but nothing close to impossible, he told them in a calm voice. How will that work? Daniel asked, curiosity in his eyes. The old man cast him a side glance, remembering the dumb boy from before, his antics still the same. We will be using some talismans for that, he replied in a light tone. Talismans? Daniel looked at him with a puzzled expression. Each of you kids will be infusing your elemental aspera in these talismans, first learning how to control the flow of your aspera and supply it into a delicate talisman, making sure not to destroy it in the process. The circuit inside the talisman is a complex thing, and learning the flow of your aspera to control it and guide it inside is necessary to maintain its stability if you ever want to use it. Sigfur explained. He snapped his fingers, and a wooden box appeared in his hands. Inside were talismans with intricate engravings and runes. There were a bunch of talismans with complex engravings and different runes etched into them, making them look like a collection. He put the box down for the group to see. Sir Sigfur, these talismans look of great quality, Amber said with interest as she looked at the talismans. If I remember the patterns properly, one of them should be for creating barriers, and this one here should be for summoning elemental constructs or launching an elemental attack. Hearing her speak as if she was familiar with the talismans, Oliver had a certain light in his eyes. It seemed she was genuinely knowledgeable about such things. He could later ask her for references or see if she knew how to make them. Sigfur's eyes gleamed with approval. Good kid, what was your name? Sigfur had a pleasant expression on his face. You can call me Amber, she said, thinking of something before introducing a bit more about her background. I am from the Blue Crown clan. No wonder. Now I see why you are aware of this stuff. Your clan is unparalleled in this field, ha ha ha. Sigfur laughed as he traced a hand over his beard. Still, for a mere kid, you were able to recognize the patterns. It's quite impressive, I must say. The clan heir is indeed talented. Amber did not say anything and just listened to his rare praise. Her lips couldn't help but curl slightly. She secretly cast a glance in Oliver's direction only to see him lost in his own thoughts while staring at the talismans. He was completely oblivious to the praise. He is not even listening. She thought with a frown. Damn. This old man actually praised her? Daniel whispered to Alfonso, who nodded solemnly. They both clearly did not expect this old man to praise them ever. They were surprised by Sigfur's compliment. To them, the old man had a black heart. You brats. What are you whispering amongst yourselves? Say it out loud if you have something to speak. Sigfur barked, his eyes sharp as he turned his head around to look at the two brats acting weirdly and whispering to each other. Were they ignoring him? No, Sir Sigfur, Alfonso stammered. We were just curious about how the talismans will help with our teamwork. Sigfur looked at him and shook his head. It's simple, he said, taking out a talisman with a rune etched on its papery surface. You will first learn to control your elemental flow, and once you all have achieved some level of control, I will assign you into pairs, 2 of you in one team. He grazed his thumb over the smooth texture of the paper as he looked at them. I will be dividing your little group into teams of 2. The 2 team members would then be tasked with filling the talisman, a blank rune talisman designed for elements. Your task will be to combine elements with your teammate and generate a combination attack, a mix of the 2 elements. I will be judging the output your team is able to generate in the end according to my standards. The more synergy between your team, the better. Sigfur paused, and the winning team will get a reward too. the group suddenly turned excited. Not only was this incredibly interesting to do, but they might also even win a reward if they performed well enough. Note that this isn't easy. Carelessness can lead to injury. Matching your partner's elemental flow is crucial, Sigfr warned. Anyways, for now, work individually. Take a talisman from the box, but don't touch the purple ones, they are off limits for now. After taking a talisman, take a seat at a desk behind and start channeling your Aspera into it. If you damage it, then take a new one. Most of them are dummy talismans, so feel free to use them. Sigfr said as he summoned a chair from his storage ring and put it in front of them, calmly sitting on it. Oliver turned around and saw a bunch of wooden desks and chairs behind him. The open hall gave a view of the outside to some extent, so it was a refreshing scene in general. He picked a talisman and sat at a desk, gently channeling his water-attributed Aspera into it. The others followed suit, focused on their task. The rest of the group followed suit and picked up a talisman for their own use. Sigfr carefully observed them. He was able to see who had more control over their Aspera while they filled the talisman with it. Sigfr watched closely, noting those with exceptional control. That white-haired kid. His control is frighteningly sharp. And the golden-haired girl. Equally impressive. He could not help but feel they were too good for their age. However, his gaze lingered on Oliver. An inexplicable discomfort stirred in his heart whenever he looked at the boy. His brows furrowed whenever his eyes scanned Oliver. It was not because he could not believe that a child his age could have such superior control over their Aspera, but something entirely different. It was just his intuition, an unsettling intuition that he could not shake. It was as if his heart was being suffocated by an invisible grip that he could not pinpoint even with his sharp senses. Not to mention, he had gotten used to searching or scanning those weaker than him. But earlier, when he first met Oliver at the mountain's base, he probed him only to be met with a blockage or a strong force messing with his senses the moment he tried to probe inside his body. It was incredulous how he was not able to map the true extent of the boy's abilities at all. Chapter 140 Unexpected Team-Up? He was sure that despite his withering age, he was countless times more powerful than this bunch of kids, yet he was not able to perform a task as simple as probing. He could easily sense the other children and their levels properly, but for some reason, he was sure that what Oliver was showing was not his true level. Of course, he had no proof, it was just an intuition of his that made him believe that or think in that direction. Only a gut feeling. Either Oliver was using an artifact beyond his years, or Sigfr's age was dulling his senses, a thought that both frustrated and concerned him. If it was the artifact, then it was too powerful for his own good. Sigfr had spent decades battling demons, patrolling borders, and dealing with the deadliest foes. He had spent a major portion of life battling disasters of mankind, he was all too aware of what was and could be classified a danger. He was familiar with the sensations when he fought such deadly demons at that time, it was still vivid in his heart. And it was a sensation similar to that whenever he tried to probe into Oliver, a strange risk that he felt in his life that was subtle but present. Did Master not notice this, he wondered, as he was sure that his master above the mountains must have felt this abnormality in the boy too. Or maybe she was not obstructed like he was? He might have to ask her about it later to confirm his rising doubts and suspicions. For now, he had to focus on training these kids and preparing them for a future covered with darkness. It took some days, but the group slowly got used to controlling their Aspera flow in the end. The kids would often fail in their attempts, sometimes destroying the talisman, blasting it, or just doing something silly at the end step and having to do it all again. All of them were seriously dedicated and never gave up trying. Alright, now I will split you all into groups of 2. The serious things would start from now onwards. Try to compliment your teammate. It will take time, but it will help you all the way later. In the battlefield, any human could become your teammate, so it becomes mandatory for you to learn to adapt to your team when your life is on the line. Sigfr said in a very serious and eerie tone. Oliver knew about this. In the battlefield against demons, any human you find becomes your ally automatically in the fight. The more allies you have on the field, the better your chances of survival. So, here's the matchup. Daniel goes with Nadia. Alfonso will go with Amber. And lastly, Evelyn goes with Oliver. He said sternly. There was a momentary silence after Sigfur announced the lineup before Daniel could not help but burst out. What sort of terrible lineup is this? He looked with widened eyes around before his eyes landed on the emotionless girl. He pointed at her as he said, "How did you even think that thunder and ice elements could ever be combined together?" He turned to Sigfur, "Elder, have you finally lost it?" Smack. A loud smack resounded in the air as Daniel was sent flying backward, crashing into the desks. Dash. Oliver looked at Sigfur, who was red with anger and embarrassment. He secretly exclaimed at how bold Daniel was. He could really provoke anyone under any circumstances without caring about the consequences. This was the shamelessness one should strive for. Stupid little brat. You dare question me? Sigfur spat in anger. He roared, "You think I have gone senile? I am still decades young before going crazy due to old age. Stop being ageist." Oliver blinked, somehow he found those words quite familiar. He had to give it to Daniel this time. Although he interrupted and was disrespectful, his initial question was valid nonetheless. Had he asked this more politely, perhaps Sigfur would have explained it deeply as well. Alas, his tongue was loose and his mind was dense, so it could not be helped that Sigfur was furious. After calming down, Sigfur stroked his beard once again, a force of habit now, as he keenly looked at the group with his sharp gaze. You don't need to think about it. The team I have assigned are correct, you just need to do it. There's no other way around it. Believe in yourself, you can do it. Also, if you act foolishly, you will suffer like that brat over there. Sigfur harumphed and left the group alone. He did not forget to leave them with some talismans, however. These talismans were the real deal, waiting to be filled with the aspera of an elemental attribute. Well. Oliver looked at the lying Daniel and then at Nadia. He should be waking up in a few minutes. You can think of what to do. Nadia had a cold look in her eyes as she gazed at the lying black-haired boy. She hated weaklings like him the most. She preferred to do it alone, not with anyone. She was more than capable of doing it. Her eyes turned frosty. This was all slowly turning pointless. She would rather have it that she was sent back to the ice chamber to hone her element more or just back to her clan. But she did not want to be the first to complain or else. She cast a glance towards Oliver, who had his back facing her as he was walking up to Evelyn. She did not want him to have any thoughts. Not only was she older than him but also stronger, she could not act like that. She felt a pang of hatred toward the old man for not pairing her with him instead. Water and ice elements were alike, they were basically one element. The ice element was a hybrid element of the water element family. She was 100% sure that her compatibility with his element and his compatibility with her element was better than anyone present here in this group with them. She was confident that as long as Oliver followed her lead, she could easily generate a very deadly attack. Using his element to enhance her own element's offensiveness, she could easily overpower everyone present with minimal difficulty. But they were not paired together. She turned around and left as well. Join for free at /winterdragon573. __________________________________________________________________________________________________________________. Hey, Evelyn. Oliver reached out to the girl standing next to the pile of talismans, looking at him. We're teamed up, she smiled. Yes. Combining our elements for an attack will be challenging, Oliver admitted, considering how the light element wasn't inherently offensive. His water element didn't seem a perfect match. The light element was basically not an offensive element by its nature. At least not until the bearer of the element developed it later into killing arts. For now, Evelyn was not in that league, so her light element was basically quite docile in nature, with healing capabilities, blinding effects, defense, and all. Stuff like that with his water element, he was not sure what to make of it. Nonetheless, his main goal was not to win the challenge set by Elder Sigfur but rather to shift his target to Evelyn from Nadia. This was the best opportunity he could have gotten so far. He just needed to be in physical contact with her for some time before the system message appeared. He just needed to somehow get in contact with her. He already had a plan to achieve that. Let's start by coordinating our Aspera. Then we can think about attack combinations. How about it? He suggested. Sounds good. Let's get in tune with our Aspera first, she agreed, picking up a talisman and placing it on the desk. How should we do it? Oliver started as he said. First, we should channel our Aspera into the talisman one by one and see if we can balance it out. If it does not work like that, then we can try it at once. Alright, will you go first? I will supply the talisman with water-attributed Aspera and fill it halfway. The rest will then be for you to fill. Not only that, but since you are going to be the second to fill it, you will need to balance out the already filled Aspera on your own. He added, basically, you will be doing everything in this try individually. All I will be doing is just filling it up with my Aspera. In the next try, I will do it all, and you will just have to fill it with your light-attributed Aspera instead. He finished with his little lecture and looked at her for a response. Evelyn listened to his explanations and nodded. I got it. Then fill it up with your Aspera. I will then maintain the balance afterward. Chapter 141 Balancing Water and Light Element. Evelyn listened to his explanations and nodded. I got it. Then fill it up with your Aspera. I will try to maintain the balance afterwards. Oliver nodded back and placed his hand against the smooth surface of the white-colored talisman. Slowly, his hand started to channel his water-attributed Aspera into the paper beneath. A warm current flowed from his hand to the paper talisman as he filled it halfway. After making sure it was filled halfway, he retreated his hand and looked at Evelyn, who was beside him. Noticing his signal, she went up to the talisman and placed her palm above the paper. Closing her eyes, she moved the light-attributed Aspera inside her body into the paper talisman, slowly filling the already half-filled talisman. She could sense the circuits inside the talisman as she filled it with her Aspera. Her light-attributed Aspera had already started to react with the Aspera present from earlier. The task required a delicate balance of focus and control, a harmony between the elements that was difficult to achieve. She could feel the subtle push and pull of energies within the talisman, like trying to balance on a tightrope where the slightest misstep could result in failure. She did her best to control the amount she was channeling and how properly the circuit was being filled. An overdose of her Aspera might just destroy everything on the talisman, after all. Her brows knitted in concentration as a bead of sweat trickled down her forehead. This was far more challenging than she had anticipated. She tried to stir her Aspera within the talisman, calculating a way to completely fill it without causing a reaction. She could feel that the water element was especially sensitive and would react turbulently to external changes or any stimulus provided. She was actually stuck. She had already filled the Aspera as much as she could without disturbing the already present water Aspera too much. But now she felt that if she sent any more inside, it would cause a huge reaction. Thus, she was slowly trying to stir her Aspera that she had already sent into the talisman. By moving them in the circuits, she was trying to calculate a way for her to completely fill the talisman without breaking it or causing it to react adversely with the water element. Looking at her frowning while closing her eyes, Oliver could somewhat guess her struggle, understanding the difficulty. Even he was aware of how difficult the task Sigfur gave them was. It would be a miracle if someone managed to complete it in a single try. Evelyn still lacked the proper control of her Aspera. There was no way she could do it in one day. Not to mention, she was dealing with the water element Aspera. The water-attributed Aspera was especially sensitive among the basic common elements. Wind and water were notably more sensitive compared to earth and fire elements. Even the slightest change would cause a huge reaction. He could understand her situation at the moment without her telling him anything. Had she been paired up with someone who had a robust element like Amber or Daniel, or maybe Nadia as well, she might have had an easier time trying to balance it out. But with her light-attributed Aspera, which was already quite a potent element in essence, his water-attributed Aspera would serve as a tough obstacle in her course. The light element would definitely try to establish dominance immediately over the basic elements, so her main task was to control the potency and stop it from immediately trying to overpower the water element. Trying to make a hybrid element coexist with a basic element was quite difficult. It was an evident fact that no exorcist could deny. So it would take her some time to even think of figuring this out on her own and applying it in person. Oliver was already aware of the theory and logic behind this. He could just tell her and help her when implementing it physically. It would not only hasten up the process by a whole lot but also help them get more time to decide on an elemental attack as well. But he had no such intentions. In fact, he wanted her to spend as much time as she wanted to figure out the solution on her own instead. This would help her develop her critical thinking skills as well as give him more time to get in contact with her. It was simply killing two birds with one stone. Also, if he kept helping her like this every now and then, he would only be hindering her own self-growth in the end and messing things up more than they already were. Crack. A sharp cracking sound echoed as the talisman she was applying Aspera to started to show signs of cracks. The paper had started to develop visible cracks as if it were a rock fracturing slowly. Oh no! Evelyn panicked a little as she lost control over the talisman. Before she could do anything, a large thunderous sound blasted through the surroundings as the talisman released all its stored energy. Boom! The talisman released all the excessive energy inside and burst out with a hot wave of Aspera, forcing her to retreat backward due to the sheer force. Her face would have charred black normally due to the sudden explosion and closeness of the blast before her face. However, as the smoke started to settle down, she slowly opened her eyes only to see a giant water wall floating in front of her face. Tilting her face sideways, she noticed Oliver with his palm facing her direction. He used the water barrier. She thought as she glanced back at the water shield, a wall of water in front of her face. It was shimmering blue. This water wall had saved her face from getting blackened. She looked at the water wall slowly shifting in form, wiggling as if it was having difficulty maintaining the shape of the wall of water. She watched as it crumbled before dripping down on the ground in front of her after absorbing the impact from the little blast. "Thanks," she whispered, feeling a little shy now that she had made the blunder. Her face heated up as a red blush crept up to her cheeks. She did not expect to directly detonate the talisman and lose control. She was expecting the control over the talisman to be as easy as it was when she was doing it individually. However, she had thought it wrong. It seemed that earlier it was easy only because she was supplying purely light-attributed Aspera towards the talisman, and it was not having any obstruction in the circuits. But in the end, the difference when it came to applying and balancing the Aspera was huge. So huge that she could not believe it. Despite all her efforts, she was not able to control the flow and in the end lost it, leading to such changes. Join for free at /winterdragon573. It was honestly hard. Be careful, you are next. She shook her head and warned him. Taking out another talisman, she started to fill it halfway with her light-attributed Aspera. After double-checking the talisman, she handed it over to Oliver, who was sitting beside her watching her fill it. "Here you go." He received the talisman and observed it without doing anything. It went on for a minute, so she could not help but ask curiously, albeit a little confused as well. "What are you doing?" She paused before adding, "You have been staring at it." "Oh, it was nothing. I will start right now." Oliver quickly shrugged it off as nothing and went to work directly. He started to channel his water-attributed Aspera inside the circuits of the talisman in a steady flow, fluently controlling the element. His flow was steady and controlled. Secretly, he was using cosmic void gaze to observe the talisman's intricate circuits. With its help, he was able to very minutely observe the intricacies of the complex circuit to the very bottom. He was using the cosmic void gaze on a suppressed level just to graze off the details. Oliver began channeling his water Aspera into the talisman's circuits, his flow steady and controlled. Secretly, he was using cosmic void gaze to observe the talisman's intricate circuits. This ability allowed him to see the complex patterns in detail, giving him a significant advantage. He used it discreetly, the same way he did in the clan market while buying supplies. The cosmic void gaze provided an extremely detailed map of the talisman's circuits, allowing him to channel his Aspera precisely. The intricate designs of the talisman unfolded before his eyes, each line and curve revealing the secrets of its construction. The knowledge he gained from this sight was invaluable, giving him insights that would otherwise take a significant amount of time for someone to normally master. It was at the same level he used to survey the clan market while buying useful stuff for himself. The level he used to see through was enough to give him an extremely detailed map of the circuits in an instant. I can really do well with talismans using the special eyes. I will definitely have an edge over others, he thought, a small smile playing on his lips as he worked. Chapter 142 Someone is impatient? I can really do well with talismans using the special eyes. I will definitely have an edge over others, he thought, a small smile playing on his lips as he worked. His fingers moved with precision, tracing the intricate patterns on the talisman. He thought to himself while slowly filling it with his water-attributed Aspera. The cool, blue energy flowed from his fingertips, intertwining with the delicate lines of the talisman. He was able to easily coordinate with the light-attributed Aspera on his first try. A soft glow emanated from the talisman, the two energies merging seamlessly. He pondered for a moment as he saw the Aspera combining with the two attributes balancing out. The light and water danced together, a harmonious blend that filled him with satisfaction. He is doing good. Evelyn sensed the flow and felt it was more controlled. He was doing better than her while manipulating the talisman. She watched, her eyes narrowing in concentration as she analyzed the smooth movements of his Aspera. She had a bewildered expression as she noticed his flawless control. He did not rank first during the mountain climb test for nothing, after all. She noticed as he suddenly let go of the flow. The talisman's glow flickered, the delicate balance disrupted. What? Her eyes narrowed as she looked at the abrupt loss of control he suddenly displayed. Her brow furrowed, confusion etched across her face. Why did he suddenly lose control? It was too sudden. 1 moment prior, he was masterfully manipulating the Aspera flow, and the next instant, he abruptly lost it. Her heart skipped a beat at the abrupt change. She was keenly observing his control, she was lost in memorizing his movements. It would have made more sense had he tried to balance it and slowly lost control, but it was just too abrupt. Swish. Crack. The talisman again started to show cracks similar to how it happened in her case. Tiny fissures snaked across the surface, the glow dimming. However, this time Oliver stopped applying any more Aspera before it burst like before and put them in danger of injury like before. He released a breath he didn't realize he was holding, his hand steady as he withdrew his energy. The control is really complex. I felt it was going quite well, but then all of a sudden, I felt a strong turbulence and was caught off guard. Ha ha ha, he laughed as he narrated his experience. He rubbed his head as if wiping non-existent sweat. His laugh was forced, the tension in his shoulders betraying his casual demeanor, at least to her. In reality, this was not at all true, but a complete facade. He was already able to grasp the correct way to control the Aspera flow the moment he first started to apply Aspera in the circuits present in the talisman. The patterns and pathways of the Aspera were clear in his mind, each line a map he could follow with ease. He even had a way prepared to maintain and coordinate the balance between the two elements on his own. With cosmic void gaze, he was directly able to observe in which line his Aspera was going and how the other Aspera was reacting towards it, the places where it would react more, the places where it would react less. His eyes glowed faintly, the world around him shifting into sharp focus as the cosmic energy revealed the hidden flows of nature. He was able to notice everything with ease. Had he tried a little more, he would have definitely succeeded in balancing it out. It would have been completed on his first try alone. Well, the tenfold Aspera talent from Nadia is not for nothing, I guess, he inwardly thought to himself as he felt the wonders of the high Aspera talent. A sense of pride welled up inside him, the potent energy humming beneath his skin. Now that he experienced it in person practically, he could clearly say that this talent was not just for show, it was too easy for him. He looked at the girl staring at him with a complex gaze. He still had to increase his relativeness with her, so if he had already completed it on his first try, the distance between them might grow further. If he wanted to bond with her, he had to make it as natural as possible and achieve it swiftly. He could now discuss with her how they should proceed and what tactics they should employ to control the elemental Aspera. More time gave more opportunities to him. Why did you suddenly? I could sense that you were doing it extremely well, so, the sudden imbalance and loss of control. I am a bit confused. Evelyn could not help but ask him. Her voice was hesitant, a mix of curiosity and concern. Same. I was totally not expecting that in the end. I could tell that I was doing it correctly until it suddenly happened, and for some reason, I just could not maintain it. Maybe a few more tries, and I might get the hang of the entire process, he replied, feigning disbelief at the situation. His eyes met hers briefly before looking away, adding to the illusion of his confusion. Looking at him being appalled at this situation as well, Evelyn nodded. She did feel it was odd, but there could be many reasons. Maybe it was the circuit that was the problem? She fell into thoughts of her own. What if she supplied Aspera in an instant and controlled it afterward? Her mind raced with possibilities, each scenario playing out in her head. Or if she should gather the Aspera and isolate it from the other elemental Aspera instead? Then she could slowly try to assimilate the two elements without worrying about filling it in the process. Or, soon enough, she was consumed by her own thoughts as she pondered on ways to improve the process, finding different ways and experimenting in her head. Her fingers traced invisible patterns in the air, mimicking the pathways she envisioned. Looking at her engrossed in her own world of thoughts, Oliver nodded to himself. A small, satisfied smile tugged at his lips. The protagonist right now was in the process of decoding the situation. Given her intellect, it should not take her long either to figure out the entire process and achieve it practically too. He just had to wait now for some time and implement his own plans. Eventually, they became busy thinking up ways to achieve the result they desired. On the other hand, the others did not sit idly either and were busy with their own strategies. Come on. This is the fourth time you are messing up. A frustrated groan from a girl sounded out as she scrutinized the boy in front of her. Her hands were on her hips, her eyes glaring daggers at him. It was none other than Amber, who was currently reprimanding Alfonso for not being able to complete the process. Her cheeks flushed with irritation, her foot tapping impatiently against the floor. Their approach was different from the others, with them dividing the roles between each other. Some portions of the circuit were supposed to be filled by Amber, while the rest would be Alfonso's responsibility. Being proficient with tools and belonging to the lineage of genius tool exorcists, she did not hesitate and quickly got the hang of the methods and the talisman's overall structural creation. In her opinion, they had the best chance of winning this small yet meaningful challenge undoubtedly. She was confident in this because she was able to grasp how to coordinate with the talisman and balance the wind element Alfonso had. Her earth element was robust and easily able to suppress and control the wind element. She was able to expertly tune the wind-attributed Aspera as she wanted to and balance it out. The earthy brown energy swirled around her, solid and unwavering, as it intertwined with the airy tendrils of Alfonso's wind element. Then what was the problem if she could already do this? The main issue was with Alfonso. He was still having difficulty grasping the technique and control to balance out her earth-attributed Aspera in the talisman, always messing it up. His brow furrowed in concentration, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he struggled to maintain the flow. However, unlike Oliver and Evelyn, who were causing mini explosions again and again, Amber did not let such a situation happen. Whenever she sensed him losing the grip on the talisman, she would directly intervene and control the situation on her own, preventing the explosion from taking place. Her quick reflexes and sharp intuition kept them safe, her hands steady as she took over the flow the moment he even showed the signs of imbalance. Come on, Alfonso. What are you even doing? An agitated voice scolded in a high-pitched tone. Chapter 143 Amber's Frustration. Nadia's Confusion. Chapter 143. Alfonso, you need to keep your mind focused, Amber advised, her tone firm and agitated. She could not help it. Her eyes flashed with irritation, her fingers tapping impatiently on the table. He nodded, trying once more but failing again. I'm trying, Amber. It's just not working, he admitted, frustration seeping into his voice as well. He clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. It was not easy for him either. She sighed, maybe we should move on to the next step and come back to this later? Her shoulders slumped slightly, a weary look crossing her face. She had said this before too. No, he said sharply, shaking his head. I need to get this right. His voice was resolute, his eyes narrowing in determination. He had no plans to follow her as is and leave this crucial step behind. She felt frustrated. Because of this, everything was significantly slowed down, even though she was able to control and balance the two elements and Aspera. A storm of emotions was churning inside her. Look, if you want to understand the principle and method behind this, I can teach you, she offered, trying to keep her cool. Her voice was tinged with exasperation, her patience now wearing thin. Since she had already managed to understand it herself, she would not mind explaining it to her teammate as well, since this would give them a huge advantage over the other two teams. I said no, Alfonso replied, more sharply this time. I need to figure this out on my own. His jaw tightened, a flicker of pride in his eyes. Why are you so insistent on doing it by yourself? She demanded, her frustration bubbling over. She threw her hands up in exasperation, her voice rising. It's my noble pride as a gentleman, he replied, his jaw set stubbornly, his eyes defiant as he refused her help. If I can't figure out something like this on my own, I'm not worthy to lead my clan. But he still had a calm in his tone despite all this. He always used a proper tone whenever talking with women. He did not get angry at Amber's hastiness. He told her that Sigfur had devised this challenge for them to be able to gain a higher degree of control over their Aspera and get in tune with a stranger's Aspera when necessary. In his opinion, if he did not manage to do that on his own, then he would not be worthy enough for his clan and to lead his clan in the future. As an heir, it was his responsibility to win fair and square. So despite her constant efforts, he never listened to her and continued trying again and again. He wanted to be able to achieve the technique to balance the Aspera himself as well. While she understood where he was coming from and felt that he was right to some extent, it could not suppress her annoyance at him either. Her fists clenched at her sides, a vein throbbing on her temple. She was pissed. You're slowing us down, Alfonso. Amber snapped, her fists clenched at her sides, her teeth grinding in frustration. Her voice echoed in the room, drawing the attention of others. The attention was short-lived as they resumed what they were doing. I know, he said quietly, but this is something I have to do. His eyes softened momentarily, a hint of apology in his tone. Although it was not his fault, he still felt that due to his lack of ability, he was slowing her down. Had Elder Sigfur permitted them to work individually, he would have gladly let Amber move forward without dragging her down. Amber pinched her forehead. She really wanted to win this challenge. She wanted to show everyone her ability, especially to a certain someone who never seemed to acknowledge her. Her eyes glanced briefly toward the figure in the shadows, her expression hardening. Meanwhile, Daniel and Nadia were busy with their own tasks. Nadia barely spoke to him and just focused on controlling the elements and Aspera within the talisman. Her eyes were cold and calculating, her movements precise and controlled. Daniel, however, tried several times to initiate a conversation with her, but she ignored him like an insect. He could not help but feel a weird sense of discomfort at being ignored constantly. However, since she was a girl, he did not say anything to her and kept trying to talk to her. His attempts at small talk were met with icy silence, his words hanging awkwardly in the air. She was Oliver's older sister and on par with him and Bella. She was also an obstacle that he had to surpass one day in the future. More importantly, she belonged to the infamous Mystic Purge clan. He somewhat admired the clan, to be honest, despite all the bad rumors associated with their name and standings. The reason was simple. He admired the clan's freedom and spirit. They did not care about anyone's opinion and did whatever they wanted without fearing anyone. They were powerful, killed their enemies without showing a shred of mercy, and were ruthless even to their own kin. Their ruthless efficiency and unyielding resolve struck a chord with him. A clan based on merit. If you turned out to be strong and talented, you would be valued the most by the clan no matter what. Potential was never wasted in the clan. As a hot-blooded male himself, he felt a strong sense of resemblance with such a clan. He often resonated with their means and tactics. He aspired to become an exorcist one day that could slice apart anything with a swing of his sword. That was also why he did not feel offended by Nadia's cold shoulder and indifferent behavior toward him. He could understand her upbringing. In a situation where siblings target each other's throats to stand at the top, it was natural that she was this cold and indifferent to them. Perhaps only Oliver and she had some level of intimacy as twin siblings related by the same blood, but he rarely saw them talk with each other, much less interact. Nonetheless, he kept filling the talismans with thunder-attributed aspera and gave them to her so that she could balance them. The talismans crackled with energy, the thunder aspera coursing through them like a live wire. And he had to admit that her control was flawless. She was already grasping the theory behind it. He had earlier noticed how Oliver and Evelyn had been causing continuous explosions, unable to balance out. However, Nadia was different. She directly froze the entire talisman with her ice element before it could even have a single chance of releasing the excessive amount of energy and exploding in their faces. The talisman glowed with a frosty sheen, the ice element locking the energy in place. While she would not reply to his questions or talks, whenever he asked her for a talisman half filled with her ice-attributed aspera, she would throw a bunch towards him occasionally. Her throws were precise, the talismans landing neatly in front of him. This was more than enough for him to practice on his own as well. So? I can see why you are so strong, but do you happen to know how Oliver became so strong? Daniel asked another question to the emotionless doll sitting next to him. He watched her carefully, hoping for a flicker of response. She once again did not reply to his bothersome questions and ignored him. Her silence was deafening, a wall between them. But in fact, in her mind, she was also pondering this question. How exactly did Oliver become so strong in such a short span of time? She remembered how brutally he was beaten by the third pair of siblings that day, and unless she had protected him, he would have died right there alone. But in just a few months, his strength rose so much that he was able to handle and kill minor-level demons alone on his own. This was something that had been bugging her for some time. She could not deduce a reasonable explanation for this exponential growth in strength. It just did not make any sense. She had thought before that he might have signed a contract with a demonic entity for temporary strength in exchange for his soul, but that was highly unlikely. Finding a demon inside a clan was next to impossible, especially where he lived. And secondly, if he had signed a contract with a demon and turned into a heretic, their mother would have surely and instantly noticed that. But since she did not say anything of it, then surely that was not the case either. But then what was that dark malevolent energy radiating from inside him when she used her special eyes to see through him in the car that day? It was so ominous that her heart almost burst out right there, and she accidentally launched an attack to kill him, which was unexpectedly stopped by his bare hands as well. The memory sent a shiver down her spine, her fingers twitching involuntarily. All of this situation was quite complex in her opinion, but she was too cold to ask him about it directly. Why does he not tell me about it directly on his own without asking? She wondered, a ridiculous thought, not even knowing what that meant. Chapter 144, Ready to Bind? Second target? Chapter 144. All of this situation was quite complex in her opinion, but she was too cold to ask him about it directly. Why does he not tell me about it directly? She thought as a flicker of confusion passed through her indifferent eyes. Her expression softened momentarily, the mask slipping just a little. If someone listened to her right now, they would definitely feel speechless. Girl, why would he tell you about his guarded secrets for no reason? talk with some sense? Of course, Nadia's mentality worked differently compared to normal people, so she was not at fault either. Damn, ignored again. Daniel said to himself as he filled up another talisman and passed it to her. Another word, and I will cut off your tongue, Nadia threatened in a chilling cold voice, as her hand turned straight. Her eyes were icy, her tone leaving no room for doubt. Gulp. Daniel felt the raw killing intent and shut his mouth immediately. He did not dare to bother her and provoke her any more after this. He glanced around nervously, the cold sweat on his brow glistening under the light. She might really cut off his tongue. Although he could heal it afterward using an elixir, that would be very painful, and he was not loaded with elixirs either. He only had one elixir for emergencies. Not to mention, he remembered how she tortured Alfonso during the duel. Poor guy, he still might have a fear of women. He glanced in his direction, and indeed his thoughts were confirmed when he saw him sitting 2 desks away from Amber, quietly filling up talismans. A hint of pity flashed in his eyes towards Alfonso. Alfonso, who was busy coordinating elements, sensed a gaze on him and looked up to see Daniel looking at him with a sympathetic gaze. He confusedly looked at the guy, not knowing what the latter wanted from him. His brow furrowed, and he tilted his head slightly, questioning. Upon seeing no change, he too ignored Daniel and went back to work on the talisman. He was close to finding out the principles to balance out the aspera of 2 different elements. He confusedly looked at the guy, not knowing what the latter wanted from him. His brow furrowed, and he tilted his head slightly, questioning. Upon seeing no change, he too ignored Daniel and went back to work on the talisman. He was close to finding out the principles to balance out the aspera of 2 different elements. It was unknown what was in his mind, after all. They are not doing bad, instead, quite decent. Especially the level and progress they are making while training and coordination. Impressive. As expected from geniuses of the 5 major clans. Sigfur quietly observed everything from the sidelines. He was especially impressed by their ability to grow during training. His eyes scanned the room, taking in each student's progress with a keen interest. It was quite clear to him that all of them were properly trying to learn and understand the concept and theory behind this rather than forcing it or not bothering with the methods. If he had to say, it was probably one of the few things that separated a genius from a common person. Alfonso had also made him quite satisfied with his determination when he straight up refused to learn the technique and method from Amber, who had already grasped it. Amber's talent and tools was probably the highest among the bunch of kids in the group. Then there was that dumb-looking brat with a foul mouth and the girl from Mystic Purge clan. They seemed to be doing well too. While they did not coordinate much together, they both were on a decent pace and would probably grasp the concept of balance soon. Then there was Evelyn, the golden-haired girl with the legendary light element. She was a genius. Each try she took, she would improve significantly and was very close to doing it perfectly. He could not help but notice another anomaly in the group, which was again that white-haired kid called Oliver. He would control his aspera like an expert and easily balance out the aspera too, but just in the end when it was extremely close to completion, he would decimate everything and lose balance. Each time, his movements were graceful and precise until the very last moment. He is doing this purposefully. Sigfur was no fool. He could tell that Oliver was kidding around and had already grasped the concept well enough to balance it. It was no coincidence either that he was doing this. Had it happened once, he would have believed it. Had it happened twice, he would have believed it. Had it happened thrice, he would have still believed it. But upon seeing the same thing happen over and over for the nth number of times by now, Sigfur was 100% sure that this white-haired kid was most probably fooling around. Fooling around either with that golden-haired girl or just passing time with no care. Whatever it was, one thing was clear. Oliver had also managed to grasp the true concept behind this. Hey, look, Oliver. I managed to complete it. Evelyn called out to the guy snoozing next to her. Oliver woke up due to the sudden noise. Just now, he was quite bored, so he fell asleep after giving her a heads up and filling multiple talismans with his water-attributed aspera. His eyes fluttered open, a slight smile playing on his lips. As for his own training? He already managed to find the solution to it and showed it to her. Dropping a few hints, he went to sleep only to be woken up by her excited shout as she managed to achieve a balance too. Great, he clapped lightly, you finally did it too. Well then, would you like to rest for some time before we decide on what to make of the combination of our elements? Actually, she said as a tired look appeared in her eyes, I think I will just rest for a while. Her shoulders sagged, and she rubbed her eyes, dark circles visible underneath. She had evident dark circles under her eyes and her hair was not in the best state either. She looked disheveled and untidy now that she was finally done. It was quite clear that she did not stop once and kept forcing herself to achieve the desired result. Oliver nodded and leaned against the desk, staring at the ceiling. The cool surface of the desk pressed against his back, offering a momentary relief. They had been at it for more than 30 hours by now without any breaks or pauses whatsoever. Evelyn was extremely hardworking, she did not deter from doing the task until it was completed. She was not the main protagonist for nothing. Her concentration was amazing. He glanced around to see the others but found none. They were probably sleeping by now in rooms arranged by the elder called Sigfur. They would rest and come and then go back and rest. Occasionally, Daniel or Alfonso would take him out to get some air, but he still stayed with Evelyn. He felt a hint of pity at the thought of her working alone without anyone by her side. The image of her solitary struggle tugged at his heartstrings. Whether she appreciated his effort or not, it was his choice to stay by her side and give her support. Well then, it's about time to implement the final step, he thought to himself as he looked at the tired girl who was now slumped onto the desk. After an hour or two, she woke up on her own and looked around with momentary confusion before realization dawned on her mind. She quickly remembered where she was and what they had been doing. Her eyes widened briefly before settling back into focus. She turned around and saw Oliver also looking at her. He smiled slightly and raised his hand holding a talisman. Ready now? He asked with a hint of amusement. I am. Now we need to think of a combination to impress Elder Sigfur, she nodded and said. But before that. He started. Yes? Can you give me your hand for a moment? He said while looking at her in a serious manner. My hand? She looked confused upon such an unexpected request. Her brows furrowed, her gaze questioning. Yes, your hand. I was thinking that since we are going to coordinate anyways, how about we do it after getting a better feel of each other's aspera? Doing this would definitely benefit us in the future. He paused before adding, how about it? I will let you inject your aspera into me, and so will I too. Of course, if you are uncomfortable about it then you do not need to do it. It's just a suggestion on my end. But I feel it would be better if we do that. Evelyn opened her mouth but could not say anything. This was indeed logical. She too felt if they wanted a better grasp over each other's aspera and form a synergy between themselves, it was necessary. She stretched forward her hand towards him and smiled, sure. Let's try it. I am also curious. Chapter 145 Second Target. Two Paths. Oliver nodded and placed her hand between his palms as he started to channel his aspera into her. A faint glow surrounded their hands, the energy flowing smoothly between them. The warmth of his aspera pulsed gently, intertwining with hers. This was all, of course, for the sake of binding with her. It was not that he wanted to do this for synergy between them or anything like that, but since he had said so, he had to at least channel his aspera into her. The thing he was doing right now was considered quite bold and frowned upon in the exorcist world because it was akin to prying into the secrets of the other party using their aspera. He could feel the weight of the taboo action, a slight thrill accompanying the risk. However, since Evelyn had also agreed to this idea, it was not an issue, and she too was going to pry into him, so this was all a fair deal. Once inside, he could instantly kill her or cripple her if he intends to, that was how vulnerable this act was. Of course, he had no such intentions. He merely wanted to have some form of physical contact with her to fill in the system's condition. Feeling the dense and potent aspera invading her nerves, she could not help but feel surprised. His aspera was so powerful and pure. She could feel the sheer difference in quality. It surged through her veins like liquid fire, making her heart race. Did he drink an elixir to refine his aspera? She could not help but feel a tingling sensation crawling under her skin, but she endured and closed her eyes to guide his aspera. Her breath hitched slightly, focusing intently on the task at hand. Oliver smiled as he stared in front of him, at the blank air before him. He was not crazy but instead was looking at a familiar floating black screen with golden words. Ding. Evelyn Starborn. Does the host wish to bind with the individual? Ding. Evelyn Starborn. Does the host wish to bind with the individual? Yes. Oliver was overjoyed as he finally received the notification. Binding. 1%. 69%. 100%. Successful. Evelyn Starborn is now the target. Binding. 1%. 69%. 100%. Successful. Evelyn Starborn is now the target. Notice, error. Underscore. This is, he stopped midway. Before he could get a chance to celebrate binding with the main protagonist, the system suddenly showed an unexpected error. What is this supposed to mean? He frowned, looking at the system screen with a hint of caution and apprehension written all over his face. His fingers tightened around Evelyn's hand reflexively. Ding. Detected the interference of Abyss. Abyss. Oliver's eyes suddenly shot wide, disbelief clouding his expression. His heart pounded in his chest, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He never expected that Abyss would be able to intervene and affect him. Was Abyss this omnipotent? He had a shuddering feeling inside his chest when he read the screen. But for some reason, his heart was calm as if it knew what was happening. An eerie sense of acceptance settled over him. Ding. Analyzing the cause. Detected. Evelyn Starborn associated with the divinity. Incompatible target for Circuit of Abyss. Ding. Creating alternatives. Alternative found. Underscore. BZZT dash. A buzzing sound resonated in his head as a strange change seemed to take place within him. It was an unidentifiable feeling, he could not clearly express it, but he was aware that something was happening and changing inside his mind. His vision blurred momentarily, the world spinning around him. Host must select a path. Path of divinity. Path of abyss. Note, an affiliation is mandatory, abyss and heavens cannot coexist. A choice must be made. A flood of knowledge poured into his brain directly as he took a deep breath. It was information about what was going to happen in case he chose a specific path. If he decided to choose the path of heavens and divinity, his body would undergo another transformation. The circuit of abyss would be forcefully removed from inside his body by the divinity. His soul itself, which had been filled with abyss energy and become one with abyss, would be reshaped. His soul harboring the corrupt energy inside would be baptized by the divine energy from heavens, cleansing it of anything related to abyss in the first place. Not only that, but this whole process had very low chances of even succeeding, as per the information he received. Abyss was not something that could be understood, the divine energy could only try to remove the influence. It was all too dangerous a process that he would have to undergo if he decided to become one with heavens. However, on the other hand, if he decided to choose the path of abyss, nothing would happen, and he would continue progressing as he had been. But then what about binding with Evelyn, the main protagonist? Oliver could never let go of the fruitful golden opportunities she would stumble upon in the future. He was 100% sure that many of them were significant milestones, and if he received tenfold of such power, it was just unimaginable. So the system derived another alternative for this situation. If he binds with Evelyn right now and still chooses the path of abyss to continue, then anything Evelyn achieves to further her progress related to anything divine would be converted and transformed in a way suitable for him, who was on the path of abyss. At the time when he became a circuit of abyss, he received some incomprehensible knowledge, most of which was still not deciphered by him. If he selected the path of abyss, the unknown knowledge in his mind imparted by abyss would start becoming available to be comprehended by him. Every time Evelyn achieved a significant milestone, as per the system's standards, a portion of the unknown knowledge would be revealed to him or entirely new knowledge would be given depending on the situation. All to make him progress on the path of abyss. Oliver was now calmer than before as he took a deep breath and exhaled. The decision weighed heavily on him, but his resolve was firm. He was still holding Evelyn's wrist in his hand. He smiled as he let go of her hand finally. He had made his choice already, it was not something he needed to think about. The moment he became a circuit of abyss, a conduit of abyss, he knew the path he was going to walk on. He had already started to progress on that path, his abyss energy was ever growing. Corrupt? Well, that was a term used to describe that energy. But to him, it did not feel that way. He felt a familiar and comfortable feeling with abyss energy, nothing corrupt. He smiled as he declared his choice. Path of abyss. He was not going to switch to heavens now that he has already become one with abyss. He doubted if divine energy could provide him the same power he desired in the future. Would divine energy allow him to kill without remorse? Would divine energy help him devour his enemies without restraint? Were heavens just and fair to all? No, or else everyone would have been born equal. But everyone die in the end. Does that make abyss fair to all? He did not know, it was a mystery of its own. He might find an answer to it in the future perhaps. Heavens were just one side of a coin, there was nothing good or evil. It was all a sense of perception established in the world. What humans considered good might not always be good for other races, and such was the case for others too. This was also the root cause of any conflict. Nonetheless, he had made his choice, there was no stopping it anymore. Ding. Path of abyss. Heavens discarded. Binding. 1%. 69%. 100%. Successful. Evelyn Starborn is now the target. He had successfully shifted the target from Nadia to Evelyn now without any issues. So, how was it? Evelyn's voice brought him out of his thoughts. He looked at her with calm eyes, it was eye-opening. I feel that we can coordinate better now, he said. His smile was genuine, hiding the turmoil within. Is that so? She raised a brow at that. That's right, your Aspera was blindingly radiant and pure. It had a sense of warmth to it. The light attributed Aspera is amazing, he praised her. Thanks. Evelyn smiled awkwardly at that. She did not know how to reply to that. A faint blush colored her cheeks, and she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Well, should I try it too? Of course, if you are fine with it. She fidgeted a little when she said this in a low tone. It was evident that she was weak to flattery. Oliver was amused. In the future, she was going to be immune to any level of flattery. She would have gotten so used to the tons of flattering words she would hear from the mouths of the people she was going to save. But right now, she was still inexperienced and shy when praised. Sure, why not, he said as he extended his right hand to her, and she placed his hand between her palms as he did. Chapter 146 Light was devoured. Sure, why not, he said as he extended his right hand to her. His eyes met hers, a reassuring smile on his face. She placed his hand between her palms as he did. She focused and started to channel her Aspera into him. The energy was cool and soothing, like a gentle breeze on a summer day. A soft glow enveloped their joined hands, pulsing with a rhythmic flow. Oliver experienced the sensation of ants crawling under his skin. His nerves were tense too. He took a deep breath, steadying himself against the unfamiliar intrusion. If Evelyn messed up here, he would undoubtedly suffer a serious injury. He immediately supplied his own Aspera to guide her inside. The mingling energies created a delicate balance, a dance of light and shadow within him. He could not back out either, as it would be unfair to her since she allowed him to pry into her and have a deeper view of her Aspera, so it was natural that he would let her do the same. If Evelyn was not the protagonist of the world, he would never have let someone her age let their Aspera flow into his body. The risk was too great, but the potential reward was worth it. If they could be in more synergy in the future, it would benefit them both equally. It was simply too risky. Evelyn was a genius among geniuses, so he was able to guide her into it. On the other hand, while Oliver was thinking about all this, Evelyn was in a world of her own. Through her senses, she could see what she was feeling to some extent. Right now, while she was inside Oliver getting familiar with his Aspera, she felt like she was standing in the middle of an ocean. The vast expanse of energy around her was both overwhelming and awe-inspiring. The ocean was endlessly vast, with no visible end. Its depth was unknown and invisible, going as deep as the eye could see. The Aspera she was experiencing was countless times more potent than any Aspera she had experienced this closely. At least in terms of purity, she was sure that even her sister was not his match. He was simply leagues ahead. Her respect for Oliver's power grew, mingling with a sense of curiosity and admiration. The surface of the ocean seemed calm, as if the ocean was dead, with minimal to no waves or tides. This showcased how terrifying his control over his element and Aspera was. Every ripple in the water seemed deliberate, showing his mastery over it. Everywhere she looked was the brightest of colors, it was truly a mystical sight. She got so lost in him and feeling his Aspera that she lost track of time, wandering her senses inside him. She experienced a newfound sense of freedom in that enclosed yet vast world of its own. Evelyn, I think it's been a long time already. Suddenly a magnetic voice drew her attention. She was still unfocused and dazed, the magnetic voice seemed like a tune to her ears. But suddenly, she felt a strong pull on her body. What's happening, she wondered, her eyes feeling sluggish. She seemed to want to stay in this place more and more. The enchanting tranquility of the ocean called to her, urging her to remain. Subconsciously, she started to resist the pull outwards and stubbornly maintained herself in that place, clearly unwilling to leave this beautiful and magical place so quickly and suddenly. While this was happening inside, the situation outside was much different. Oliver had a dark expression on his face as he tried to take his hand back, but Evelyn was tightly clutching his hand between her palms, not letting go even for an instant. Her strength was terribly strong for a frail girl. If Oliver was not mistaken, in his terms, she might be close to level 4 in strength alone. Her raw power was something else entirely. He marveled at her unexpected physical prowess, this showed her latent potential as the protagonist, with such strength for her age was nothing but impressive. He could easily overpower her with his raw strength alone but hesitated. He did not dare to be too rough or he might injure himself. An internal injury was way worse than an external wound and took much longer to recover. Even with the help of potions, internal injuries required a lot of care in comparison to external ones. He did not want to waste his potions on such a silly thing, and he did not have any elixirs on him either at the moment. Well, he doubted any of them did either. He tried to pull his hand slowly, but it was of no use. He called out to her multiple times, but she did not even respond. He was getting impatient and curious. What was it that she was seeing inside that she was not waking up or answering his calls? Was she fine inside or not? He worried both for himself and her. He had to shake off his hand somehow from her firm grasp without messing up. Evelyn! Wake up, he yelled near her ear. She frowned but still did not respond. He yelled a few more times while also trying to pull his hand back, but the most she would do was frown and then go back to how she was. She was crazy. Frustrated, he had no choice but to resort to something else. Since he couldn't wake her up externally, the only way left was to do something internally. And he had a great idea of what to do. Join for free at /winterdragon573. He was going to use abyss energy to push her out. He closed his eyes for a moment before opening them again. The abyss energy inside his body moved, creeping its way towards where Evelyn's Aspera was concentrated the most. The dark tendrils of energy slithered with purpose, their destination clear. It soon reached that point. The corrupted energy extended tendrils toward the concentration of Aspera, slowly breaking it down and assimilating it into itself. The abyss energy really is breaking it down so easily. He had a surprised expression. The abyss energy had devouring properties. He was aware of it after his fight with the old ghost. However, he was still surprised when he saw the Aspera breaking down instantly under the influence of the corrupted abyss energy. It did not even put up a fight, which showed just how potent the abyss energy was. He carefully channeled the abyss energy, extending tendrils of corruption towards the pure light-attributed Aspera, instantly tainting it pitch black and absorbing it. The merging energies created a stark contrast, darkness enveloping light slowly. He had to be extremely careful doing this. He did not want to harm Evelyn unintentionally while doing this either. She was the main protagonist. If he somehow injured her, it might even affect her future. He was quite sure that Evelyn was not doing this all on her own. Either she was affected by his Aspera or something else. She was not the type to act like this. Had it been Bella instead of her, Oliver might have considered that she was doing it intentionally out of her own curiosity. But Evelyn was more mannered and humble than her crazy older sister. He believed that even she was unaware of what was happening. If he let the abyss energy roam free and drown the concentrated light-attributed Aspera inside, Evelyn might even lose her life. At the moment, while he was vulnerable with her Aspera inside him, she too was very vulnerable. Her entire focus and concentration were in there. If the abyss energy acted, it might just destroy her will and mind instantly. He slowly surrounded the concentrated Aspera from all sides and started to apply pressure on it. The darkness pressed in, constricting the light with an almost unshakable force. Evelyn, who was fully immersed in the ocean world, was suddenly jerked. She looked around and noticed the sky was getting pitch black. A creepy sense of discomfort enveloped her chest as she gazed at that blackness. It was oddly disgusting to her. A feeling of hatred arose in her heart when she looked at it. It was utterly ominous and dreadful. The serene ocean began to churn, reacting to her turmoil. Evelyn could not help but start to feel suffocated as the foul energy covered the sky. It was as if she was getting trapped in a bubble that was shrinking slowly. A golden aura burst forth from her body instinctively. She used her light-attributed Aspera towards the extending dark sky, intending to erase it, cleanse it, remove it from existence itself. The golden light clashed with the darkness, illuminating the sky with a fierce brilliance. However, a cold bucket of water poured on her when her expectations were not met. The light only touched the black sky before getting sucked into it and disappearing completely. Chapter 147 Evelyn's Despair. Reveal it to him? What she wanted to do with the dark energy happened to her instead. The pull on her body intensified, as if forcefully trying to drag her outward. Meanwhile, the dark, ominous sky began to descend on the beautiful and serene ocean. The once tranquil waters now churned violently under the oppressive darkness. Evelyn's heart throbbed when she saw the foul and corrupted power tainting the beautiful and calm ocean. The sight filled her with an unexpected sense of loss and despair. The pristine blue waters turned murky, reflecting her growing helplessness. An unfamiliar sense of anger rose within her at that moment. Her eyes were fierce. She could not bear to see the ocean being covered in pitch-black darkness. It hurt her. Her fists clenched, a fiery determination igniting within her. Just as the strong pull on her body reached its limit, she was forcefully dragged out of the mystical place that was slowly being ruined. Her eyes could not move away from the scene of destruction. Tears of frustration welled up in her eyes as she was torn away from the dismal sight. The darkness consumed the last vestiges of light, leaving the ocean in complete turmoil. The image burned into her mind, a cruel reminder of the overwhelming corruption, a horrifying view. She wanted to protect the place, but she was powerless to do so as the force finally pulled her outside. Her spirit felt battered and bruised as a deep sense of failure washed over her. Her heart ached with helplessness. Huff. 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 She panted heavily as her consciousness was pulled out of Daniel's body and returned to her own. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, her chest heaving. Her eyes were wide, and she clutched her chest while she panted. The room around her spun, her legs feeling weak and unsteady. She looked as if she had just awoken from a nightmare. She took a minute to calm herself and slowly steadied her breathing. Her hands trembled slightly as she wiped the sweat from her forehead. Her mind could still recall the ominous waves of corrupt energy that feasted on her aspera as if chewing candy. She felt powerless. She felt powerless. Powerless against that ominous black energy. She felt a true sense of fear and rage. But more importantly, what exactly had happened? She looked at Oliver, who was sipping water while calmly watching her. His demeanor was relaxed, almost as if nothing unusual had occurred. Then she realized what they had been doing. She could not help but ask, what happened? Oliver placed the cup down and said, "You are not coming out. I tried to shake you out, but you didn't budge an inch." His voice was calm, but there was a hint of concern in his eyes. He wondered if she had sustained any serious mental wounds or not. "So I had to force you out." Evelyn's face instantly shifted from confusion to embarrassment. Her cheeks flushed a deep red as she looked down, avoiding his gaze. She had completely forgotten when she was inside the calm ocean of aspera. She had become too engrossed in that view, and her mind blanked out. She could only imagine how much Oliver must have tried to wake her up or shake her off, but she resisted and did not leave. This was so impolite. The situation could easily be misunderstood as her trying to pry deep into his secrets and body now that she had unrestricted access to it. And Oliver could do nothing about it. He had voluntarily allowed her will inside, but forcing her out carelessly might have caused him to suffer greatly and affect his aspera. In the worst case, he might even have been crippled if she had tried to make things difficult for him. However, she really did not have such intentions. She herself did not know how she lost control, but something about that calm ocean and bountiful aspera made her get lost in it. "I am sorry. Please forgive me for my actions. I can assure you that I really did not have any ill intentions at that time. All of it happened without me realizing." She stood up and bowed to Oliver while apologizing profusely. She looked back at him with guilty eyes. "Please trust me, I did not have any bad intentions." Her voice wavered, and her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She felt really guilty. Due to her carelessness and lack of discipline, this happened. Had her mind been stronger enough than it was now, she would have been able to resist the temptation and could have even resisted that black energy from before. To her, Oliver had no reason to trust her either. For all he knew, she might have already seen more than she should have been allowed to. It was impossible to tell. Of course, she had not done anything of that sort, but convincing him with her words alone was the best she could do since she had no concrete proof that she did not pry deep into him. Now, she felt really anxious. If Oliver did not trust her, things might escalate. Although it was his idea to try this whole thing, it did not lessen her responsibility. She did not know what to do. If things turned messy, their clan's relations might also be affected because of her mistake. Looking at the guilt-ridden girl, Oliver sighed. He was aware that she was clueless about what happened inside and did not do it intentionally. He rubbed the back of his neck, contemplating his next words. "It's fine. I trust you," he said. "Really?" She looked back at him in surprise. Oliver was exceptionally calm about this. It was natural, after all. He did not worry about her seeing his secrets, thanks to Abyss energy. If even someone like Ophelia was not able to pry through him, Evelyn could never do it. He was confident. The Abyss energy was impossible for them to penetrate. Evelyn heaved a sigh of relief as she slumped back into the chair. She looked at him with a serious face and asked, "How can I make it up to you?" she added. "I know this is not a simple matter, and for you to believe my words so easily, I have to show my sincerity as well." Her determination shone through her eyes as her earlier fear was slowly replaced by resolve. Looking at her determined face, Oliver pondered. While he knew Evelyn did not intend the previous incident, she still wanted to make up for it. With that serious face, he knew she would not back down easily, not that he intended to waste energy on persuasion. "Well, I can't think of anything right now. I will let you know in the future if I need something from you," he said. He gave her a reassuring smile, trying to ease her anxiety a little. Evelyn thought about it for a moment and nodded. It was not like she could ask him to find something right away. She bit her lip, feeling a bit more at ease but still wanting to prove her sincerity. After settling down, she recalled what happened inside his body. What was that foul black energy? This time, her tone was deeper and serious. She had a sliver of rage when she mentioned that ominous energy. Oliver looked at her. Seeing her frown and hidden anger, he knew she was really associated with divinity. It did not take a genius to guess that the abyss and heavens were polar opposites, incompatible existences. It was natural for someone affiliated with divinity to feel loathing or negative emotions upon encountering abyss energy. Evelyn, despite being weak, still had a strong tie to the heavens. The abyss energy was the literal opposite of divinity. However, he had expected her to ask about it after witnessing it. Black energy? What are you talking about? Oliver looked at her and raised a brow in confusion. What? It's that corrupt thing that was slowly covering the sky. The thing that was extending tendrils of darkness all over the space. She slammed the desk as she stood up and looked at him. Her voice trembled with urgency and frustration. Sky? What are you even talking about? I have no idea about any tendrils. Oliver had a blank expression on his face. He looked innocently clueless. Tell me you are joking. She mumbled. What? Oliver tilted his head at her as if he did not hear what she just said. Why, you don't know what that was? How was it inside you then? What's going on? Evelyn muttered aloud as she saw his cluelessness. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of his ignorance. Was he really clueless or? Seriously? She had an incredulous look on her face when she realized that Oliver did not have a clue about the ominous thing rooted inside his body. You. She paused and fell into thought. She contemplated whether to tell him about it or not. Chapter 148, Deciding on Element Combinations. Chapter 148. In the end, after some thinking, she decided not to worry him. She was not sure whether that thing was real or just a fragment of her imagination experienced while being pulled out of a mystical environment. Perhaps her mind deluded itself into imagining that thing and relating it to the force pulling her will out of Oliver's Aspera. But she seriously doubted that. She had experienced that energy so closely it could not be fake or imaginary. The memory of its malevolent presence lingered, too vivid to dismiss. She had felt her Aspera being devoured raw easily. The strong sense of corruption and disgust, that primal ominousness, was too horrific to be imagination. She had seen demons before when her clan's exorcists would hunt or sometimes seal them and bring them back to study. They reeked of dread and danger, but even compared to that black energy was terribly malevolent and unsettling. It gave off a feeling of death. It was a darkness that seemed to swallow light itself, far more menacing than any demon. She wondered what could be darker than a literal demon, and that too inside him, a human being. She thought about what to do. Should she consult her mother? Her mother had a friend who was a highly skilled exorcist, just like her, someone with a light element. She was far more knowledgeable about such matters than Evelyn was. She should consult her mother and ask for advice. Perhaps they could tell the difference, whether it was her imagination or real. If Oliver was really unaware of such a thing inside his body, this was a serious issue. He might be in danger. That energy, no, that thing, could very well be a threat to his life. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. A sense of urgency gripped her heart as she realized the potential danger Oliver was in. Her resolve hardened, knowing she had to act quickly and decisively. She had to prevent that scenario from ever arising. Despite being friends for only a few months, they had developed a strong bond. Their shared experiences had forged a connection she couldn't ignore. They were her very first friends. She could not let such an impending danger loom over him and threaten his life in the future. She had made up her mind to consult about it later or find a clue regarding that. Oliver, I know this may sound stupid or even weird, but please listen. Right now, I cannot tell you about this, I have to be sure about it myself first. But. She paused before continuing, if you ever feel something odd happening within you, something dark or ominous, I want you to contact me first no matter what. Her eyes bore into his, filled with earnestness and worry. She spoke in a deadly serious tone, her voice did not carry even the slightest sense of childishness that should have been there. Ah, it's the classic protagonist dialogue. Not sure about it but still willing to put everything into helping their friends. Cannot tell the victim about it, cannot discuss the future, cannot warn the victim. Just trust the protagonist. Oliver's lips curled up slightly, he found it amusing and quite interesting that Evelyn was willing to help him with a problem that did not even exist. He admired her determination, even if it was based on a misunderstanding. Yet he had no intention of stopping her from doing this. By the time she even got a clue about it, he would have already made sufficient preparations. Now that it's over, how about we come up with a suitable attack for our elements together? You are right, let's not divert from the main topic of this whole thing. She sighed deeply, her shoulders relaxing as she let go of the intense emotions from earlier. Evelyn could not help but sigh, the past few moments had been quite intense for her, and her mind felt exhausted. I have some ideas about possible combinations. You can listen to them and decide if we should go with them or make up something new, he suggested, to which she nodded her head. His eyes lit up with excitement as he began to explain his thoughts. Anyways, she was too tired to think much, it was better to let him decide, and she would see if they could be implemented by her or not. Oliver had no intention of winning the challenge set by Sigfur, he was just going with the flow. If he and Evelyn happened to win, then it would be unintentional on his part. The main thing to be learned from all this was team coordination and synergy improvement, after all. And for him, he had successfully managed to bond with Evelyn as well, which had been his main goal since the start. As for the elemental combinations, it was not too hard. He, someone with modern knowledge about light and water properties, along with the creativity from various fantasy books he used to read, could easily come up with a few combinations and techniques of his own. What was light basically? Theoretically speaking, light is essentially composed of discrete packets of energy called photons, he pondered. His mind raced through various possibilities, each more exciting than the last. And photons have energy, and therefore, light also has energy. Since light consists of not one but many photons, light beams could be said to be filled with energy. Water also has a lot of energy in various forms too. Kinetic, potential, and so on. It's not an imagination to create something destructive if they combine their elements together. People of this world often associated the water element with defense and rarely with offense. So was the case with the light element in the initial stages. It was just that the element is so rare and important to humanity that people revere it. But if utilized properly, even the water element could unleash a destructive force, in the initial stages at that. How about this? He looked at her and narrated the idea he had on his mind. Evelyn's eyes narrowed the more she heard about the idea. Her expression shifted from curiosity to excitement as she grasped the potential of his plan. The next day, Sigfur was once again observing the children carefully. However, he noticed that the white-haired kid and the golden-haired girl were no longer practicing with talismans anymore. Have they finally achieved synergy? He wondered. He leaned forward slightly, his interest piqued. If that was the case, then he had to say that he was quite impressed by their talents and coordination skills. Water and light were two very sensitive elements, not to mention the light element was inherently dominant over other elements due to its nature as a hybrid element. Maintaining or forming a balance with two such sensitive elements was incomparably hard for someone their age. He was not expecting them to achieve it so fast and quickly. They had immense talent. To achieve such a feat at this age was too impressive. He had seen countless individuals, and among them, hardly a few could have done this at such a young age. He looked around, they were not the first ones to achieve synergy among themselves. His gaze turned towards another table where Amber and Alfonso were engrossed in a sheet of paper, both scribbling down something. She had ultimately forced Alfonso to follow her advice and give him hints. Of course, he had tried to stubbornly refuse, but she was so frustrated that she directly yelled all the hints and methods out in his ears. Her voice had echoed in the room, leaving Alfonso stunned and speechless. He could only look at her dumbfounded with disbelief at how crudely she had told him about it. He was so shocked that he was not able to utter a single word at that time. But somehow they had managed to sort it out with each other later and had been working on a possible combination since then, planning extensively. Elder Sigfur. A voice called out to him. He looked at the source of the voice, and it was the young girl called Evelyn. Behind her was Oliver, who had a poker face while looking at him. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes gleamed with anticipation. What is it? Well, the thing is, we wanted to practice our element combination, and if we do that here. She turned around and looked at others, busy with concentration. Her voice trailed off, concern for her fellow mates in case they created another massive explosion affecting their concentration. You already thought of something? He asked in a surprised tone. It had not even been a day since she and Oliver managed to achieve synergy with their Aspera. And they had already managed to think of a possible combination? He was quite amused and interested. He wondered what he should say. Chapter 149. First team comes forward. You can use the backyard for practical implementation. Thank you, Elder. Evelyn beamed and nodded. Her enthusiasm was infectious, spreading a smile across Sigfor's face. The fog hung thick in the air, muting the world in shades of gray. He nodded, and they left through the back exit, which led to a wide-open ground. It was foggy and dark, with moss covering the walls, evidence that it had not been maintained much over time. The ground squelched under their feet, leaving imprints that quickly filled with water. The damp air was thick with the scent of earth and decay. Evelyn shivered, not from the cold, but from a strange mix of excitement and anticipation. Let's get right into it. Evelyn exclaimed excitedly. Oliver smiled at that. He had to explain many things to her for her to understand his idea. But once she understood, she was so excited that she kept making possible combinations from the branches of theory he taught her. Her eyes sparkled with every new idea, her energy seemingly boundless. It has been a few weeks now, and I have observed that almost everyone has reached a certain level of synergy and coordination with their teammates and elements. So it's time I see what you have prepared, Sigfur said as he stood up and looked at the group of children. His gaze was sharp, appraising each child with a mix of curiosity and expectation. Come one by one with your partner and demonstrate the combination you have come up with. We will go first. Amber announced as she dragged Alfonso behind her. What are you doing? We should wait and observe others first. He looked at her in disbelief and whispered desperately. His voice was a hiss, barely audible over the murmur of the other children. Never in his life had he seen such a reckless girl. They should have waited first and let others show their moves, then they could have made adjustments to their own elemental combinations. He felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach, but her confidence was unyielding. But here she was, charging in recklessly. She looked at him and assured him, Don't worry, with what we have prepared, I doubt anyone can do better than us. Alfonso was still skeptical, she was too hasty to think things through. Her certainty both irritated and inspired him. He shook his head and left everything to fate. Whatever happens was going to happen anyway, it was just a simple challenge in the end. Are you ready? Sigfur asked. Yes, Elder, we are both ready, she said proudly. Her voice echoed with determination, filling the silent courtyard. All right, then show it to me. Sigfur made a gesture with his hand, and a runic symbol-filled paper floated in the air in front of him. Soon enough, a translucent barrier covered the walls and the surroundings. The air hummed with the energy of the barrier, a faint blue shimmer outlining its edges. It was done to prevent the shockwaves or impact any of the elements might have on the surroundings. "Alfonso, start!" Amber called out to him as she clasped her hands together in a praying form, with her eyes closed as she focused on something. "Here you go." Alfonso put both of his hands forward, twisting them slightly, forming some gestures. The sound of nearby wind slowly started to intensify in the area before him. The noise kept rising as wind started to gather in front of him. Soon enough, everyone could see and feel it. The wind in front of Alfonso was starting to rotate in a spiral form. Before they knew it, a mini wind cyclone was taking birth. The speed of the wind kept increasing as time passed by. Alfonso was channeling his aspera continuously. He non-stop poured aspera into the cyclone, watering it like a plant as the cyclone only kept getting bigger and bigger. On the other hand, Amber was doing something different. Her hands, which had been clasped together, moved as she pulled one of her palms upwards, just at the height of her forehead. The ground before her started to turn mushy, losing its form as if someone had turned the rock into clay. The moment she pulled her hand upwards, multiple pieces of rocky land, which had now been reduced to nothing but a clayey form, started to rise from the earth. Her brow furrowed with concentration, every movement precise and deliberate. Each piece of clay was a chunk extracted from the ground, leaving the flat surface with multiple holes. She once again did something. Her hand, which had still not moved from the praying gesture, turned as she stretched her palm towards the clay balls that were slowly rising from the ground. Her eyes were determined and her focus was sharp. She slowly started to close her outstretched palm. As her fingers neared the center of her palm, the clay balls shook as if someone was sending shockwaves through them. In front of everyone, the balls made of rocky clay started to deform once again, their shape changing slowly under the enormous aspera focused on them. The clay balls stretched, slowly turning into long lines, hardening at the same time under the effects of her earth-attributed aspera. The group could see the clay turning into something akin to a stick. Amber focused, her brows knitted together as she opened her eyes and stared at the sticks. Her hand closed. The moment her fingers touched the base of her palm, the sticks started to float and shook violently. The size of those rocky sticks was slowly shrinking. No, it was more accurate to say Amber was compressing those sticks, reducing their size and increasing their density. The sticks made out of rocks trembled as they compressed to the point where they were nothing more than extremely sharp and thin needles. One glance at them and anyone could tell they were quite sharp. Amber used the hand still above the level of her forehead, moving it down, and the needles followed her direction. She pointed towards the raging cyclone that seemed to be slowly enveloping the surroundings. One could see strong wind currents making the clothes of the other children flutter. Amber's own hair whipped around her face, yet she stood resolute. However, somehow Alfonso's clothes were intact, unmoving and normal. It was as if the wind was not even reaching him, much less having an effect on him. His focus was unwavering, the wind obeying his every command. It was a testament to his control over the wind element. He was properly controlling the winds around him to cancel any strong currents coming his way. The needles flew directly into the cyclone. It was at that moment when Amber's and Alfonso's eyes met. They seemed to be in sync, as if they knew what was happening with the other's aspera. Their movement slowly turned into coordination, flowing smoothly and unifying as one. "Move," both of them said at the same time. Boom. It was at that moment when the mini-cyclone exploded with force and power as it spun at a crazy fast speed, destructing everything in its trail. Even the earth below was not spared. A shockwave rippled out, causing the children to stumble back, shielding their faces. Oliver narrowed his eyes at the spectacle. Through his special eyes, he was able to perceive the extremely fast-moving, densely packed needles roaring inside the tornado. It was so fast that the movements of the needles had long turned blurry to the normal naked eye. They had merged with the wind as one. It was a terrifying sight. Anything in direct contact was destroyed by the force and punctured by the sharpness of the needles. The metal dummy on the ground was torn apart the moment it came in contact with the raging cyclone of wind combined with the robust energy and power of the earth element. It was a destructive sight. Had they been stronger, it would have been enough to obliterate a battalion or group of demons at once. The offense-related spell was just that powerful. Amber had properly used her element's destructive nature, and Alfonso had skillfully incorporated the element into his calm but sharp wind element. They both managed to pull this through despite the opposing nature of their elements. It was not bad for their age and talent level. Sigfur clapped. "Impressive," he said as he looked at the moving cyclone. "Very creative of you two to come up with this. The needles are quite strong for an unarmed body, and coupled with the raging winds and their sharp nature, it fits perfectly well." Sigfur analyzed the cyclone with interest. He nodded approvingly, a rare sign of genuine praise. Amber and Alfonso looked at each other with smiles. They were quite happy to have been acknowledged for their efforts. Amber's eyes subconsciously wandered towards a certain person. Chapter 150 Daniel and Nadia. She saw him staring at the raging cyclone. She seemed quite proud at the moment, but it was not long before she saw his neutral and uninterested eyes. Her excitement waned like a flame doused by water. She could not help but stare intently at him, wondering what was wrong with him and whether he could see the spectacle clearly. His lack of reaction gnawed at her confidence. Her heart sank slightly, a shadow of doubt creeping in. Alfonso, who was initially listening to Sigfur's praise, turned his head in her direction and saw her looking somewhere else. His brows furrowed as he followed her gaze. Following her gaze, he looked up to see her staring at Oliver and Evelyn, who were standing side by side. He frowned for a moment, observing her closely. He could tell she was more focused on Oliver for some reason. His body turned stiff for a moment as he harbored a thought. A flicker of understanding crossed his mind. Could it be that she is, he thought with a stoic face, not knowing what to make of the situation. Here was Sigfur showering them with praise and tips, but she was not even listening, her attention was diverted to the guy behind. His frustration mounted, feeling the sting of her disregard. Should this be the behavior of a proper heiress, a lady? To ignore an elder's words and fool around? Was she not realizing the importance of proper manners? He felt a little uncomfortable. Just as he was looking at Amber with a hardened gaze, she turned back to him. "What?" she frowned and questioned. "You." He started before pausing for a moment. He thought about it and then continued, "It's nothing." He turned back towards Sigfur and continued listening to his words. Amber glanced at him weirdly before shrugging her shoulders. "Next, who will come?" "Me. Me. Me. Elder Sigfur." A loud voice exclaimed, disturbing the calm and peaceful surroundings instantly. "Elder. Elder. We want to go next." "Elder. Shut up." Sigfur roared, stunning the person behind the loud voice. "You stupid brat. I can hear you once, why are you shouting here? I have not gone senile yet." The elder yelled at the boy, who instantly shut up. "Noisy brat." Sigfur sneered, his eyes holding a hint of anger and irritation. He rubbed his temples, trying to keep his composure. After all, this was the stupidest kid he had ever taught or mentored in his life. His patience could not keep up with that loud kid. Of course, the kid in question was none other than Daniel. His boisterous nature was a constant test of Sigfur's patience. He was so excited by the previous display of elements by Alfonso and Amber that he could no longer control himself. He had to show his elemental combination, he could not wait anymore. His body practically vibrated with eagerness. He was bubbling with energy and adrenaline after witnessing such a display. Sigfur frowned, Daniel was too ill-mannered. It was quite clear they were opposites in personality. Yet, there was a raw potential in the boy that Sigfur couldn't ignore. He had to teach Daniel to be more patient and calm. "Come forward." Sigfur snapped his fingers, and the still raging tornado instantly dispersed. Seeing him disperse their combination attack so easily, both Amber and Alfonso felt a little dull. They exchanged a glance, both humbled by his effortless display of power. Sigfur was indeed unfathomable. "All right. Come on, Nadia." he urged as he excitedly got up and went to the space where they were supposed to demonstrate. He almost jumped over when he was finally called. Nadia was still expressionless, she did not care about such things. She would go when she was called. It did not matter to her whether it was first or last. Her calm demeanor was a complete contrast to Daniel's enthusiasm. "Show me." Moving forward, they performed just as spectacularly as the previous duo had done. Nadia stepped forward, her face calm, but her eyes held no expression. She extended her hand, and the air around her seemed to shiver. A sharp, glistening icicle began to form, growing longer and thicker, its surface covered in frosty patterns. It floated menacingly in mid-air, the tip pointed outward, ready to strike. Nadia had created a sharp and long icicle. It was thick and frosty, looking deadly as it floated in mid-air, aiming at the surroundings. The cold radiated from it, making the nearby air chill noticeably. Daniel moved closer, his presence crackling with energy. He raised his hand, and tiny arcs of electricity danced between his fingers. With a focused look, he directed his power toward the icicle. Lightning surged through the air, striking the ice. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The icicle began to pulse with electric energy, a deadly combination of ice and thunder. Daniel had used his thunder element to charge the icicle with lightning. The end result was quite surprising, the ice pulsed with thunder as it levitated in the air. The hum of electricity filled the air, creating a tense, charged atmosphere. The area filled with a low hum, the charged air vibrating with potential. The icicle, now a lethal weapon, hovered menacingly, glowing with an eerie light. It was clear that if anyone were struck by this creation, their fate would be sealed. The power radiating from it was palpable, strong enough to send shivers down the spine of anyone watching. Daniel had a wide grin on his face as he looked at the terrifying creation of his. Just one shot of this was enough to annihilate all his future enemies. He looked towards Nadia as he made a thumbs-up gesture to her, but she ignored him, solely focused on the ice levitating in front of her. "Quite destructive, Sigfur commented while stroking his beard. He felt it was quite good for children their age. He doubted anyone around their age was capable of achieving a synergy with their elements to this level. Ice and thunder were elements of destruction by nature. Being hybrid elements, they had more potency than normal elements. It was no surprise they managed to make this powerful attack. As he assessed the icicle charged with thunder, he felt the power behind the attack. It should be strong enough to obstruct a rank 2 exorcist for some moments. Not bad at all. While this dumb brat is annoying, he has the skills. The elder's eyes shone with a certain light as he looked at the floating icicle. As expected from the heiress of the Mystic Purge clan. That icicle is far from ordinary, he thought to himself. The icicle radiated a certain frost, chilling the air around as if trying to freeze the air itself. Normal ice was not this potent. It was obvious she was special. He imagined them growing, with their potential. He had a feeling they might even catch up to their older generation, his generation, in terms of power and skills if they kept training hard. "Elder, how do you like our special combination?" Daniel asked, the elder lost in his own thoughts. "It is." Sigfur looked at Daniel, who was looking at him with excitement, waiting to be praised. "Not bad." Daniel's expression soured when he heard the lacking remark. He retorted, "What do you mean by not bad, elder? Is it great or not? Give a definite answer, please," he frowned and demanded. Sigfur sighed, this kid would definitely get complacent in the future. The elder's patience was wearing thin. "You both worked hard. The elemental combination has a certain destructive power that is rare to come by at your level of attacks. If you could pour more aspera, it might even resist a rank 2 exorcist's force for some time as well," Sigfur told them. "However, don't be too excited, this is all there is. Both of you still have room for a lot of improvement in the future. It's better that you don't become arrogant and look down on others. The world is vast, and there are geniuses everywhere," he added. To make his words sound more effective, he pointed his finger towards the floating icicle. The next moment, a short beam of gray light shot out from the tip of his finger, directly colliding with the icicle and destroying it as if it were glass hit with a hammer. Not only that, the gray light pierced through the ice and smashed into the barrier, producing a strong ripple in it. Daniel was looking at the scene with his jaw dropped. He turned his head from the ripple back to where the icicle was destroyed. The small ice shards on the ground, laced with electricity, were proof of how powerful the thing Sigfur just did was. Just a single small move from Sigfur completely destroyed their combined elemental construct as if it were nothing. Daniel looked at the scene with a dumbfounded expression.